Maryland, Wednesday, October 2nd, 2002, 6:30 p.m. 55-year-old program analyst James Martin is walking to his car in a grocery store parking lot. He's shot in the back and dies on the spot. The next day, it happens again.
Over the course of 15 hours, 5 different victims were hunted, shot, and killed.
7:41 a.m. 39-year-old landscaper James Sonny Buchanan mows the lawn outside an auto mall when he's shot in the back. 8:15 a.m. 54-year-old cab driver Prem Kumar Walikar fills his tank at a gas station and is shot in the chest. 8:30 a.m. 34-year-old housekeeper Sarah Ramos sits on a bench reading. She's shot in the head. 9:58 a.m. 25-year-old nanny Lori Ann Lewis Rivera vacuums the back of her minivan. She's shot in the back. 9:15 p.m. 72-year-old Pascal Charlotte crosses a busy intersection. He's shot in the chest.
All these victims are within a 7-mile radius.
Bullet fragments recovered from the crime scenes all came from the same weapon, a high-powered .223 caliber Bushmaster rifle. Law enforcement now knows the shooter is a sniper. Fredericksburg, Virginia, Friday, October 4th, 2:30 p.m. 43-year-old homemaker Carolyn Sewell is loading bags into her minivan. She's shot in the back, but survives. 3 days, 7 victims, 0 suspects. Police set up a hotline and offer a $50,000 reward. Tips pour in about 2 possible getaway vehicles. One, a blue Chevrolet Caprice. The other, a white van.
Because people who are eyewitnesses or ear witnesses to the crime say they saw a white van, all of a sudden, that's what everybody focused on.
Who is this elusive killer picking off people from a white van? Cops scramble to figure out the answer. Chief Charles Moose's daily press conferences become must-see TV, and the sniper is watching.
There is an ongoing rumor that somehow we have a person in custody with regards to this situation. That is not the case.
Chief Moose had mentioned on TV that the streets are safe, the schools are safe. We warned him, do not challenge this guy in public, because if you call him a coward, he's going to kill more people.
The sniper takes immediate vengeance. Bowie, Maryland, Monday, October 7th, 2002, 8:09 a.m. 13-year-old student Iron Brown is walking on the sidewalk to school. He's shot in the abdomen. In the woods near the crime scene, police find their first big clue, a tarot card. It's the death card with a message for the cops.
The message is very clear on the back of the tarot card. It says, "For you, Mr. Police, call me God." An adult might say police. Mr. Police might denote somebody much younger in age.
Either this sniper is going through psychotic breaks every time he writes these communications, but when he's actually sniping, he's completely lucid. Or, for the first time in American history, we have a sniper team.
In early October 2002, a sniper team has completely paralyzed the Washington, D.C. area, shooting 8 people in 7 days. The killings spark one of the largest manhunts in U.S. history. But the snipers evade the dragnet and continue to kill. Manassas, Virginia, Wednesday, October 9th, 8:18 p.m. 53-year-old civil engineer Dean Myers is pumping gas. He's shot in the head and dies instantly. Later, a black male is seen watching the investigation from a parking lot across the street. Police question him, but let him go. The same man had been spotted in the area with a younger black male an hour prior to the shooting. Is he an eyewitness? Or could he be the D.C. sniper? Massaponax, Virginia, Friday, October 11th, 9:30 a.m. 53-year-old Kenneth Bridges is pumping gas. He's killed by a single bullet to the chest. This time, there's an eyewitness.
There was one kid, he was a 19-year-old, he said he saw a young black kid with an afro peel out in a dark sedan, and that's where the shot came from.
But the local sheriff didn't find the witness credible. The following day, police release composite images of a white box truck and raise the reward to $500,000.
Everyone is edgy. People are hearing things.
10 days, 10 shootings, 0 arrests. Panic strikes the D.C. area. Falls Church, Virginia, Monday, October 14th, 9:15 p.m. 47-year-old FBI analyst Linda Franklin walks to her car outside a Home Depot. She's shot in the face. Cops quickly set up a roadblock, but there's no sign of a white van or box truck. A blue Caprice is stopped, but it's allowed to pass through.
By this time now, Washington, D.C. and the Beltway area is completely locked down. The Pentagon now has aerial surveillance trying to assist law enforcement in capturing these suspects.
Shortly after the Franklin murder, authorities receive a tip that breaks the case wide open. Robert Holmes, an ex-soldier living in Washington State, calls the FBI and tells them about an Army buddy who he believes is committing the murders.
And this man happens to have a rifle, which of course is the same caliber as the one that's being described by the media in all the shootings.
While FBI agents investigate, law enforcement catches another big break, this time directly from one of the killers.
The sniper wasn't getting the adulation he thought he deserved. And so he made a phone call and left a message about a robbery that occurred in Montgomery, Alabama.
During that incident, which took place 2 weeks prior to the sniper spree, 2 female clerks were shot. One died, the other survived. A teenage black male, who police spotted fleeing the scene, left behind a fingerprint.
He actually did some reconnaissance work where he walked into this store and he picked up a magazine. He actually left his thumbprint clearly on that magazine.
Before authorities can make a positive ID, the snipers claim 2 more victims. Ashland, Virginia, Saturday, October 19th, 8 p.m. 37-year-old Jeffrey Hopper is leaving a steakhouse with his wife. He takes a bullet to the abdomen, but lives. Tacked to a tree behind the restaurant, police find a 3-page letter from the snipers sealed inside a sandwich bag.
The suspects have asked the police to please deposit $10 million into a bank account, and then the killings will stop.
Police bring in scent dogs to track the killers.
The scent dogs tracked to this neighborhood, and they found a guy who was basically barricaded in his basement with thousands of rounds of ammunition and all sorts of weapons.
Has law enforcement stumbled upon the sniper's lair?
They put him under surveillance. They're looking into his background.
It looked like he was the guy, but he was just another nutcase who was barricading himself against the apocalypse.
On Sunday, October 20th, authorities finally get a match on the fingerprints from the Alabama robbery. They belong to 17-year-old Jamaican Lee Boyd Malvo. Immigration officials had scheduled Malvo for deportation about a year before the murders.
On December 19th of 2001, both Malvo and his mother detained for approximately 3.5 weeks.
While they were in INS custody, they took their fingerprints. Lee's mother was released on a $1,500 bond, and Malvo was released on his own recognizance.
Authorities quickly learned that Malvo had been living with a 41-year-old ex-Army machinist named John Allen Muhammad. The same Army buddy Robert Holmes warned FBI agents about a few days prior.
What Holmes tells the FBI is that Muhammad and his surrogate son would do target practice shooting at a tree stump in the backyard using the Bushmaster 223. From there, they determine what kind of vehicle Muhammad was driving, and the hunt begins.
In October 2002, 2 rogue snipers lay siege to the Washington, D.C. area.
So at this point in the investigation, the forensic evidence, the witness testimony, and the profile all lead towards Muhammad and Malvo working together as a sniper team.
But the suspected snipers remain on the loose, and they're primed to kill. Aspen Hill, Maryland, October 22nd, 6 a.m. 35-year-old bus driver Conrad Johnson is stepping onto his bus. He's shot in the chest. At 11:45 p.m. the following evening, Chief Moose announces that John Allen Muhammad and Lee Boyd Malvo are the prime suspects in the sniper murders. Cops put out an APB on Muhammad's 1990 Chevrolet Caprice, New Jersey tags NDA 21Z. Late that night, A truck driver spots the Caprice parked off Interstate 70. Authorities respond in force, expecting a firefight.
At approximately 3:19 in the morning, the SWAT team now makes an approach. They come up, they break the glass, and within the vehicle, they find both John Muhammad and Lee Malvo fast asleep. The suspects are arrested without incident, and they are taken to an unspecified location.
In the back seat of the Caprice, cops find a high-powered sniper rifle, locked and loaded.
The evidence team recovered the Bushmaster 223 rifle that was used in the killings, and it had the DNA from both Malvo and Muhammad on it.
The $250 Caprice had been transformed into a rolling sniper nest.
They painted it dark blue so that it wouldn't have a lot of glare. They had heavy tinting on the windows. They cut out a sniper hole in the back of the vehicle.
How could authorities overlook such a suspicious vehicle during one of the biggest manhunts in American history? They didn't.
At various times during these 3 weeks, Muhammad was actually stopped and people ran his license plate. But since they weren't looking for a Caprice and since they were still chasing this ghost white van, it never registered with anybody.
Muhammad and Malvo are eventually indicted on multiple counts of murder and attempted murder in Maryland, Virginia, and D.C. 2 weeks after his arrest, Malvo is interrogated without his lawyer. He brags to police that he's responsible for all of the murders.
In fact, he said he intended to kill them all. At this point, Malvo would have done anything to please Muhammad, to protect him, to take the fall for him, because he was completely indoctrinated and controlled by Muhammad.
The strong bond between Muhammad and Malvo traces back to the Caribbean island of Antigua, where Malvo and his mother had been living since 1998.
They're living in a shack with no electricity or running water.
Malvo's father had been out of the picture since he was 5. They had shared a strong bond, which his mother hated.
It's alleged that when he cried out for his father, his mother would beat him, pull his hair, throw shoes at him, basically physically and psychologically torture him.
Enter John Allen Muhammad, the man who would become the father figure Malvo desperately wanted. Muhammad fled to Antigua in March 2000 with 3 of his own children, whom he kidnapped in the middle of a custody battle with ex-wife Mildred Green.
In spring of 2000, Malvo's mother was advised to go to Muhammad to buy illegal documents to try to get to the United States. Muhammad becomes friendly with Malvo's mother, and when he meets Lee Boyd Malvo, he takes an immediate interest in him.
When Malvo finally arrives in the United States, he comes with Muhammad and ultimately acts as a de facto son, actually calls himself John Lee Malvo in homage to John Muhammad.
Records show that as of August 2001, Muhammad and Malvo were living together at the Lighthouse Mission, a Christian homeless shelter in Bellingham, Washington.
According to the people at the mission, Malvo and Muhammad were completely inseparable. They did everything together. They didn't socialize with other people.
In Bellingham, Muhammad transforms Malvo into a bona fide killer.
John Muhammad takes Malvo and has him reading war material. Basically, Muhammad teaches Malvo to be a sniper. He takes him out to the forest with a rifle, and they use paper plates, and he trains them on these paper plates as if he was shooting human heads.
He also made him do first-person shooter video games. This was to desensitize Malvo to shooting real people. Malvo was trained, and in order for him to please the man that made him feel good, he had to kill for him.
For 23 days in October 2002, 2 snipers terrorized the Washington, D.C. area, randomly shooting 13 people, killing 10. But John Allen Muhammad and Lee Boyd Malvo are about to have their days in court. Virginia Beach, Virginia, October 13th, 2003. John Allen Muhammad stands trial for the murder of Dean Myers, who was gunned down while pumping gas in Manassas, Virginia.
During this trial, the defense is completely outmatched. We have over 400 facts and evidence. We have over 120 witnesses. The overwhelming physical evidence can be used against him, ultimately cause the defense to simply collapse. Muhammad refuses to testify in his own defense, and his accomplice, Malvo, refuses to testify against him.
The jury finds Muhammad guilty on 4 counts, including capital murder, which carries the death penalty. Next up is Malvo, who stands trial as an adult for the murder of Linda Franklin, an FBI analyst shot and killed in a Home Depot parking lot.
In his defense at trial, Malvo claimed that he was brainwashed by Muhammad.
But we have so much evidence that points to the fact that he predetermined his actions. It simply won't fly, and it doesn't.
The jury finds Malvo guilty of Franklin's murder. He gets life in prison without the possibility of parole. 3 years later, in 2006, it's the state of Maryland's turn to prosecute Muhammad and Malvo. But prior to trial, Malvo makes a deal with prosecutors to plead guilty to 6 counts of capital murder and testify against Muhammad.
During this trial where Muhammad is representing himself, we have Malvo coming into court, and through his statements, he literally buries Muhammad. John Muhammad claims, of course, that he was set up, and the only reason that he and Malvo were in the area is because they were looking for his children who had been taken away from him in a custody dispute.
The jury sees through Muhammad's claims, convicting him on 6 counts of capital murder, each carrying with it a life sentence.
Throughout the entire trial process and all the appeals that he filed to the Supreme Court, Muhammad claimed he was innocent. Eventually, on November 10th, 2009, he was executed by the state of Virginia.
Muhammad died without ever revealing the master plan behind his madness. Malvo eventually discloses the real plan: to take out Muhammad's ex-wife, Mildred Green.
Muhammad wanted to get custody back of their kids, and he was going to kill her, mixed in with all these random other shootings so that nobody would actually pay particular attention to that. That's actually the underlying motive for all these murders.
In the aftermath of Muhammad's death, Lee Boyd Malvo fires one final shot.
He ultimately is going to make the statement that Muhammad sexually abused him.
As I stated in the original profile, I thought that the lead sniper might be controlling the younger sniper by sexually victimizing him. And in this particular case, Malvo had been victimized as a younger child as well.
As inmate number 1180834 at a Supermax prison in Virginia, Lee Malvo has come to terms with the extent of his destruction.
I am sorry. There is no way to express that. It's my cross. I understand the role I played. I understand what happened to me, and I understand the consequences that affected many people's lives.
Investigators now know that prior to their rampage in the D.C. metro area, Malvo and Muhammad were responsible for at least 12 additional shootings across 6 states, including 6 murders. Mesa, Arizona, Wednesday, June 4th, 2008, 5:25 p.m. 29-year-old businessman Travis Alexander is showering in the comfort of his own home. His 2 roommates are out of town, but he's not alone.
At his house, Travis Alexander will sustain a gunshot wound to the head, 27 stab wounds, and he will also sustain a laceration of the neck, which is almost to the spine from ear to ear.
The killer leaves Alexander's body slumped on the shower floor. Over the next 5 days, Travis's friends grow increasingly concerned after he misses an important business meeting and fails to answer or return calls. Finally, on Monday, June 9th, they pay a visit to his home.
They enter the residence to a horrific scene.
What's going on?
A friend of ours is dead in his bedroom. We hadn't heard from him for a while.
Hello.
Hi, so what's going on?
He's dead. He's in his bedroom.
Okay.
In the shower. Everyone's been wondering about him for a few days.
Mesa police arrive and find no signs of robbery or forced entry.
For a crime scene description, the police refer to it as basically a butchering of a human body. It's obviously a homicide.
Officers take statements from Travis's roommates, friends, and ex-girlfriends. The name they give detectives is Jodi Arias.
The friends describe Jodi Arias as an ex-girlfriend, someone who's obsessive, who's jealous, and suggested the detectives find her.
Crime scene investigators uncover an abundance of forensic evidence left behind in the bloodbath.
A spent .25 auto shell casing is found. You can tell by blood spray pattern analysis that there was obviously a fairly fierce struggle.
Hair fibers are collected from the floor and the baseboards. Some of the hair fibers are very long and clearly don't belong to Travis.
Investigators notice a load of laundry in the washing machine. They check it and make a discovery that stops them in their tracks.
They find a camera which has been run through a cycle in an obvious attempt to destroy the memory card.
The detectives are able to remove the memory card from the camera with hopes that it will identify the perpetrator.
Detectives soon learn that Travis was supposed to travel to Cancun, Mexico with an ex-girlfriend, Marie Hall. They question Hall about Travis and his other exes. Without hesitation, she mentions the name Jodi Arias and describes her as a stalker.
Pretty much at the outset, they were able to go, okay, we need to talk to this gal, because obviously what they're telling us here is an individual who has a lot of issues, certainly psychological, and certainly possessive and very jealous in nature.
On June 10th, the day after Travis's body is discovered, lead detective Esteban Flores receives multiple phone calls from Arias.
Not only is she calling detectives, but she's apparently leaving voice messages on their answer machines to get a hold of her so that she can help them in the investigation.
From her home in Wairika, California, Jodi tells police she hasn't seen Travis Alexander in over 2 months. A week later, Jodi travels to Mesa to meet with detectives. She volunteers to be fingerprinted and provides a DNA sample.
She's willing to do whatever she can to help in the discovery of the person that killed Travis.
The June 2008 murder of Travis Alexander sends shockwaves through the community of Mesa, Arizona. The successful businessman and leader in the Mormon Church seems like the last person on earth anyone would want dead.
He is single, he owns his house, he's got a fancy car, and for a young lady, this is it, catch of a lifetime.
Thursday, June 19th, 2008. Lab results finally come back from a memory card belonging to a camera found inside a washing machine at the crime scene. The recovered, time-stamped images are game-changing. They show Travis and Jodi together at various times on June 4th, the day Alexander was murdered. An image taken at 5:29 p.m. blows investigators away.
It's time-stamped, almost literally to the second, the exact time that the homicide occurred. When detectives really look at it and study it, in the reflection in Travis Alexander's eye, you can see the image of Jodi Arias taking the photograph.
On June 25th, Detective Flores calls Jodi and questions her about the photos.
Even though the detectives confront her with all the images of the two of them together, and it's time-stamped and date-stamped, she still denies ever having been there.
But what exactly is Jodi's alibi? Between June 3rd and June 5th, she claims she was driving to Salt Lake City to meet a man named Ryan Burns. Under questioning, Burns reveals that it took Jodi nearly 48 hours to complete what is normally an 11-hour drive. Police calculate the distances between where Jodi, Travis, and Ryan live. They estimate that Arias could have driven from Northern California to Travis's home, then gone on to Utah, and still had up to 10 hours to spare.
We know that Jodi rented a vehicle 100 miles from the place where she was living.
She removes the plate to avoid detection. She also turns off her cell phone, which says she can't be tracked.
That's not all. While she's on the road, Jodi purchases gas cans at a Walmart, presumably so she doesn't have to stop for fuel in Arizona. When Arias finally returns the rental car, she's a day late and there are 2,800 additional miles on it and no floor mats. Then, cops discover an unsettling coincidence. The bullet retrieved from Travis Alexander's cheek matches the caliber of a gun that went missing from Jodi's grandparents' house 8 days prior to the murder.
I don't know how you could get links that are any stronger than this.
By July 3rd, the complete DNA analysis is back from the crime lab. All of the evidence points to one person.
A bloody palm print, which was taken at the scene, contains the DNA of Jodi Arias. They also have hair samples that match the DNA profile of Jodi Arias. You can't email it, you can't FedEx it. I mean, it's there. It's captured on the crime scene at the time that the crime occurred.
Wairika, California, Tuesday, July 15, 2008. Cops arrest Jodi Arias at her grandparents' house. Detective Flores flies in from Mesa to interrogate her.
On July 15th and 16th, the detective spends hours interviewing Jodi Arias, and she continues to deny any involvement. But what she does is very bizarre.
When the detectives are not in the room present with her, she is standing on her head. She is examining the audio recorder. She's kind of mumbling to herself.
You should have at least done your makeup, Jodi, gosh.
It's almost as if she's feigning crazy.
On day 2 of interrogations, Jodi's temperament shifts dramatically.
Here, she is kind of swinging the whole mood scale. She's, giggling at one point, she's crying in the other point, she's talking to herself.
Detectives aren't sure if it's an act or not, but Jodi plays the role of someone who wouldn't hurt a fly.
If I had planned to hurt him in any way, I don't think I could stab him. I think I would have to shoot him continuously until he was dead, if that were my intention, if I had it in me anywhere to kill him.
Even when officers present Jodi with the overwhelming evidence against her and point blank accuse her of murder, she still maintains that she'd never hurt Travis.
Didn't take Travis's life.
You haven't convinced me. I hope you can convince the jury, but I doubt it very seriously.
On September 5th, police charge Arias with first-degree murder and extradite her to Phoenix, Arizona. She pleads not guilty. By September 2008, 14 weeks after Travis Alexander is savagely killed in his shower, Mesa, Arizona police have their prime suspect, 28-year-old Jodi Arias, behind bars. Now, they go to work to figure out exactly who Jodi is.
Jodi Arias is a young woman who grew up in Salinas, California. She's one of 5 children, and we hear of 2 very different Jodis. She talks about being physically abused from the age of 7, yet there's no proof. And then she tells us that she lived an almost ideal childhood.
Jodi Arias does have some people who state that there was nothing off about her. They liked her. She was very personable.
One of her friends describes her as someone who everyone wanted to be around.
Jodi does not complete high school. She drops out of the 11th grade for whatever reason. She goes through a series of odd jobs. Ultimately, she finds herself working for prepaid legal services.
While working for prepaid legal, Jodi meets Travis Alexander.
Travis Alexander has somewhat of a disturbing background, the fact that both of his parents are meth addicts. He is raised by his grandmother, who ultimately indoctrinates him into the Mormon church.
The fateful encounter between Travis and Jodi takes place in September 2006 at a convention in Las Vegas. For Arias, it's love at first sight.
They exchange, in a fairly short period of time, 82,000 emails back and forth.
The relationship is highly charged and highly sexual. 2 months after meeting, Jodi becomes a Mormon, and shortly thereafter, she moves to Arizona to be with Travis.
Alexander and Arias date exclusively from February to June 2007. Then, Travis starts having second thoughts.
He now views Jodi not as this lifelong soulmate, but rather as somebody who is leading him down a path of destruction, that he is breaking the Mormon tenets. And at this point, he decides that he needs to break off the relationship. And this is where it is now going to start turning south for both of them.
Despite the breakup, the exes continue a sexual relationship. While Jodi remains hung up on Travis, he begins dating other women. Is this Jodi's motive for murder?
When Jodi finds this out, we're now going to flip the switch, and we're going to set a train in motion that will not be stopped under any circumstance.
According to Travis, once he's with new girlfriend Lisa Andrews, Jodi got hostile.
He had complained that she was stalking him. She had come in through his dog door in the house and was walking around the house when he was sleeping.
She's threatening him. He believes that she slashed the tires on his car, and that she's also sending threatening emails not only to him, but to other women.
Lisa Andrews shows police one of the angry emails she received while dating Travis. In it, the anonymous sender calls her a shameful whore. While she can't prove it's from Jody, she and Travis both believed at the time that Arias was the one behind the message. But despite the threats, Travis still couldn't say no to the sex.
Jody is so determined to be a part of Travis's life that she even offers to clean his residence for $12.50 an hour, and Travis agrees. Travis is so addicted to the sexual relationship that he gives her keys to his residence to allow her to come and go freely.
Even though she moved back to California, Jody didn't stop prying into Travis's life. She allegedly stole his personal journals and hacked into his social media accounts. Travis eventually confronted Jody about her invasive behavior, but still allows her back into his home on June 4th.
He is absolutely stepping into uncharted territory. He has no idea that he is walking on still water filled with crocodiles.
In the aftermath of the brutal slaying of Travis Alexander, his 28-year-old ex-girlfriend and prime suspect, Jodi Arias, becomes a household name. While prosecutors in Maricopa County, Arizona, build a case to bury her under the jail, Arias takes her story to the court of public opinion.
Jody grants an interview to a local newspaper, and in that interview she states in her arrogance that she's confident she'll be found not guilty in the murder of Travis Alexander.
2 weeks later, in a television interview, Jody does an about-face.
Jody offers another version as to how Travis was murdered. In this version of events, Jody says that she was with Travis, in fact, and that two people had entered the residence and had assaulted Travis, and she managed to escape.
Jody had already tried the home invasion narrative with cops. Under interrogation, she told them that a man and a woman dressed in black, one with a gun, the other with a knife, overcame Travis, then turned the gun on her.
She has no idea how it happened, but the individual with the gun points it at her, presses the trigger, nothing happens. Miraculously, she is spared.
She runs out of the residence. She's so fearful for her life that she just decides to not tell the police and pretend that this thing never happened.
I feel responsible because I feel that I could have done more. I feel that I should have gotten help. I feel that I should have been stronger.
You feel responsible because you did this.
I did not.
Jody, you did. You did. And there's nothing you can say that'll change my mind.
Fast forward to August 2010. After sitting in jail for almost 2 years, Jody offers up yet another version of what happened the day Travis Alexander was killed.
The next story is the fact she was with Travis. She did, in fact, kill him, but it was an act of self-defense.
And what she describes is they had spent a day of sex and bondage, and she was using the camera to take some pictures of him. And in so doing, she damaged the camera, and that Travis had become so enraged and upset with the damage that she had caused to his camera that he attacked her. And in defense, she killed him.
Now she remembers having fired a shot, but doesn't remember anything else. It's a very convenient way of blacking out.
Phoenix, Arizona, Wednesday, January 2nd, 2013. The Jodi Arias murder trial begins at Maricopa County Courthouse. With cameras allowed in the courtroom, the trial becomes must-see TV.
One of the things that makes it very compelling during the trial is that the salacious details come out about sex, about phone sex, about breathing heavy.
Explicit text messages are shared. A 30-minute telephone conversation is played where the couple are discussing sexual experimentation with Pop Rocks and Tootsie Rolls.
Prosecutors argue that Jodi premeditated Travis's murder.
What they believe is that she had plotted to kill him all along. She traveled to Mesa, Arizona. She caused him to lower his inhibitions. And once Travis was vulnerable and naked in the shower, Jodi stabbed him, shot him, and left him for dead.
Jodi's defense is almost solely based on her testimony. She spends 18 days on the witness stand, displaying a variety of personalities to see if anyone catches sympathy from the jury. But prosecutor Juan Martinez is unrelenting.
The message for Mr. Alexander indicating that you got lost, fun, right?
Yes.
That's not true, right?
That's not true.
She's all over the map, and rightly so.
Okay. I don't know how to count them. I don't know. Just take your word for it.
May 8th, 2013. 4 months and 1.7 million taxpayer dollars later, Jodi Arias is found guilty of first-degree murder. But the jury still must decide what sentence best fits the severity of the crime. Shortly after the verdict, Jodi tells reporters she's ready to die.
And in a jailhouse interview, she says longevity runs in her family and she does not want to spend the rest of her life rotting away in prison.
After 2 days of deliberations, jurors fail to reach an agreement on Jodi's fate.
Because they deadlocked, now they have to have a different penalty phase.
A year later, in February 2015, a new jury convenes to sentence Jodi Arias.
This time, they're 11-1 in favor of the death penalty, but the decision must be unanimous. And so at this point, the judge intervenes, steps in, and sentences Jodi to life without the possibility of parole.
According to published reports, Arias plans to appeal her conviction, maintaining that she killed Travis Alexander in self-defense.
I think Travis was so enamored and so infatuated that he didn't pay attention to those red flags.
You have a person that has the ability to be what she needs to be at any particular moment. However, if you cross her, she becomes the praying mantis. And after mating with her, she not only bites off your head, but she devours your entire body.
Hollywood, California, Sunday, February 2nd, 2003, 6 p.m. 40-year-old Lana Clarkson works her usual shift hostessing at a live music spot on the Sunset Strip. The B-movie actress is aging in a town obsessed with youth.
Lana Clarkson is very striking, tall, blonde, beautiful.
Lately, acting isn't paying the bills, but working in the members-only foundation room at the iconic House of Blues, Lana stays connected to industry folk. She meets showbiz legends there every night. Around 1:30 a.m. that Sunday night, Clarkson meets a flamboyant, well-known music producer in his 60s, although she doesn't recognize him. Lana escorts the powerful celebrity to his seat. They talk, they laugh, they get along. The star is slurring his words, though, having already consumed several cocktails prior to arriving. Still, he orders a shot of 151 proof rum.
Lana makes sure that he gets down the elevator and down to his awaiting limo.
The famous patron asks Lana to come back to his house for a nightcap.
Initially, she refuses this advance, but he keeps on imploring her, and eventually she is going to, in fact, get in the car and go home.
Chauffeur Adriano de Souza drives the couple to a huge mansion outside of Hollywood. They arrive sometime around 3 a.m. and spend the next 2 hours talking over a bottle of tequila. 5 a.m.
Adriano de Souza hears a single gunshot, which is emitted from the mansion. Adriano goes into the location. He looks in the foyer.
What the chauffeur sees shocks him to the core.
There is a chair, which is in the foyer in the center. You can see the blood. And here's Lana Clarkson in it. And she is slumped down in the chair, so he calls 911 immediately.
I think my boss killed somebody. Please, can you send me
Do you think your boss killed somebody?
Yes, yeah.
The call comes from the mansion of music mogul Phil Spector. Authorities respond in force, only to find Clarkson already dead at the scene.
The investigators determined that Lana Clarkson was shot once with a single bullet to the mouth.
Who fired the gun? Was it the chauffeur? Was it Phil Spector? Or could it have been Lana herself?
When the police arrive a short time after 5, what they see is Phil Spector standing in the foyer. He's by the woman. He's got his hands in his pockets.
The officers order him to remove his hands from his pocket. He refuses. A struggle ensues. And the officers ultimately have to tase Mr. Spector.
Coming up, cops investigate Phil Spector. Could the man who created the soundtrack of our lives shoot a beautiful actress in the head? On February 3rd, 2003, cops respond to a shooting at the Alhambra, California mansion of 62-year-old music legend Phil Spector.
Sometime after 5 a.m. in the morning, Adriano, the chauffeur, says Phil steps outside and says, "I think I killed someone."
Police find a gun on the floor next to Lana's body.
The gun was found on the floor near her left leg. However, Lana Clarkson was right-handed.
At the scene, Spector allegedly tells one of the first responders he was the one who fired the gun.
What the Alhambra officer said she heard Phil Spector say was, "I didn't mean to shoot her. It was an accident."
CSI combs through the mansion for forensic evidence. They find a blood-soaked diaper in the powder room off the foyer. Tests confirm the blood is Lana Clarkson's. At 6:09 a.m., less than 90 minutes after Lana Clarkson is fatally shot, Phil Spector is in cuffs, charged with her murder. At the station house, Spector flips his story and denies that he accidentally shot Lana. Instead, he angrily tells cops that Clarkson committed suicide, degrades her, and says she had no right to come to his castle and blow her head open. The tantrum falls on deaf ears. Spector's bail is set at $1 million.
He contacts Robert Shapiro, who of course was the attorney for O.J. Simpson. Robert Shapiro bails him out, but not before the police are able to do basically a forensic test kit.
A month later, in March 2003, detectives announced that they don't believe Lana Clarkson took her own life. Spector goes into damage control mode, claiming that he had nothing to do with Clarkson's death.
Phil Spector is going to tell his friends and associates that it's an accidental suicide, that it is not a homicide.
Phil went on to tell his friends that he fully expected to be exonerated.
Spector even takes his story to the media.
During an interview with Esquire magazine, Phil said, "She kissed the gun, and I don't know why."
Did Lana Clarkson actually pull the trigger? In the months following the mysterious February 2003 death of Lana Clarkson, police investigate two divergent theories. One, that the actress shot herself. The other, that Phil Spector murdered her. Spector's supporters have a hard time believing the 5'5" music icon is capable of murder. But the music producer developed a reputation as a control freak, who allegedly brandished firearms to exercise power over others.
Many, many documented cases, many instances where people relayed that in studios that Phil Spector had pulled guns on them.
He was in the studio with the Ramones, and one of them was ready to leave, and Phil pulls out a gun and tells them, "You're not going anywhere."
On another instance, John Lennon was actually chased down the hallway by Phil Spector, who had a gun in his hand that he had just fired previously within the recording studio.
Turns out, Spector's obsession with guns traces back to deep insecurities he developed as a teen.
He was very short, very skinny. According to Phil Spector, when he was younger, he was assaulted in a men's room by 4 hoodlums who beat him up, urinated on him, and because he was not able to take care of himself physically, he then decided he was always going to be armed.
Detectives learned that decades before he met Lana Clarkson, Spector had a gun around another woman, his wife, Ronnie Bennett, lead singer of girl group The Ronettes.
We know from Ronnie that he was alleged to have many, many guns in the home, hidden in many different places within the home.
According to Ronnie, her marriage to Phil Spector was a living hell.
He became so obsessive and so threatening. He often locked her in the closet. He would hide her shoes. He monitored her telephone calls. He even displayed a gold coffin in the basement of the house, telling her that he would kill her and put her on display in this coffin for all to see if she ever left him.
One day, Ronnie decided she'd had enough.
She runs out barefoot and escapes and leaves every worldly possession behind when she does so. So that's pretty desperate.
Ronnie divorced Spector in 1974. That same year, he nearly died in a severe car accident.
He sustains major injuries to his head as a result of being thrown through the windshield, and this is where he becomes a recluse. He starts really getting into medication, into pills, into drinking. In 1991, he suffers an even greater loss, which is the loss of his 9-year-old son who dies of leukemia.
He admitted that he was probably his own worst enemy, probably a little insane, and had devils that fight inside of him.
But Spector's ugly history with drugs, alcohol, and guns, all of which were present the night Lana Clarkson died, doesn't mean he killed her. In September 2003, 7 months after Clarkson's fatal shooting, the coroner finally declares her death a homicide.
The coroner described Lana as someone who he thought was hopeful and did not seem to exhibit any signs of depression, and so he ruled out the possibility of suicide.
Yet there was one controversial finding.
The coroner's report also indicated that there was gun residue on both of Lana Clarkson's hands, which would indicate that she may have fired the handgun.
She could either have the gun or she could have been struggling over a gun. So it's one of the two things, but there was gunshot residue on her hands.
Toxicology reports show that Clarkson was intoxicated when she died. She had a blood alcohol level of 0.12 and therapeutic levels of Vicodin in her system. As for Spector, he wasn't sober either.
Toxicology shows that Phil Spector has Prozac, he has Topamax, which is an anticonvulsant drug, as well as alcohol in his system the night that he's arrested. Phil Spector had been diagnosed as bipolar, so he was always continually experimenting with different types of combinations of medications to see if he could control it.
Detectives theorize that Phil Spector shot Lana Clarkson in a drug and alcohol-fueled rage. The grand jury formally charges Spector with murder on November 20th, 2003.
Phil Spector is indicted. He denounces the DA as Hitler-like, along with his stormtroopers in the DA's office that are coming after him.
I urge a fellow artist, Governor Schwarzenegger, to step in, stop this miscarriage of justice and obstruction of justice.
He's going to set the stage for a battle.
Los Angeles, California, Wednesday, April 25th, 2007. The long-awaited murder trial of Phil Spector gets underway at LA Superior Court.
There's several delays during the course of the Phil Spector trial. There were revolving defense attorneys. At one point, Phil Spector fires Robert Shapiro and hires famed attorney Leslie Abramson, who represented Lyle and Eric Menendez.
The judge allows cameras in the courtroom, so the trial quickly turns into a circus with Spector as the ringleader.
12 years after the O.J. Simpson trial, the media again is insatiable with the notoriety of Phil Spector and the accusation of killing Lana Clarkson. Spector feeds into the frenzy by appearing in court daily with an ever-changing outward appearance.
The case against Phil Spector is mostly circumstantial, but what the prosecution lacks in hard evidence, they make up for in material witnesses.
The main witness for the prosecution in the case was Phil Spector's chauffeur, Adriano D'Souza.
D'Souza is outside. He hears a single gunshot. According to his testimony, Phil Spector comes running out of the mansion. He's got a gun in his hand, says, "I think I killed somebody."
The defense counters, claiming D'Souza's version of events isn't supported by the evidence.
The chauffeur said that Phil Spector exited the residence with a gun in his hand, while photographs clearly show that the gun was found in the residence at the feet of Lana Clarkson.
They go after Adriano D'Souza's lack of English skills, and they're saying that perhaps he misinterpreted what Phil Spector had said.
But D'Souza says one thing on the stand that's irrefutable.
D'Souza testified that on the night of Lana Clarkson's death, Phil Spector was completely drunk.
In addition to the alcohol and medications found in Spector's system on the night of the murder, prosecutors also focus on a pack of Viagra found in a briefcase at the crime scene. 2 of the pills were missing.
The prosecution's position was on the night of Lana Clarkson's death, Phil Spector had popped a couple of Viagra pills, drank some alcohol. Lana Clarkson wanted to leave. He did not want her to go, and thus presented a handgun and shot and killed her, trying to prevent her from leaving.
According to testimony from the medical examiner, Lana suffered bruises on her wrists and forearms, indicating she put up a struggle. Prosecutors argue that Lana Clarkson's murder was not the first time Phil Spector pulled a gun on a woman. They present 5 women from Spector's past who testify that the music mogul had a shocking pattern of violence towards women.
Deborah Robitaille, who was a former employee and girlfriend of Phil Spector, described 2 incidents in the 70s and in the 80s when she tried to leave a party and Phil produced a handgun and began yelling and screaming at her, "I will blow you away. I will shoot you."
Melissa Grosvenor states that Phil Spector put a gun right into her face and told her, in no uncertain terms, that if you try to leave, I'm going to kill you.
Former girlfriend Dorothy Melvin states that a drunken Phil Spector pistol whips her and threatens her with a shotgun.
He told me to take my clothes off and to go up to the 3rd floor.
Take your clothes off?
Yes.
Was he pointing the gun at you when he said this?
Yes, he was.
Stephanie Jennings, who's a photojournalist for the music industry, states that in 1995 she's in a hotel room, that he enters, threatens her with a firearm, which forces her to call 911.
Diane Ogden testifies in 1989, Spector made her undress at gunpoint, attempted to rape her, and threatened to blow her brains out. Spector's lawyers attacked the credibility of the 5 women.
Philip did not shoot this woman, and they can't change that by bringing in tall tales from other girls.
The defense team is going to say that these are nothing more than sycophants, that they were around him when he was famous, when he was powerful, and even after his fame and power dropped off, they came back to him, even after these alleged incidents occurred.
Next, they go after Lana Clarkson, saying she had motive to take her own life.
The defense is saying that she's basically a failed actress, that she's despondent, she can't get anything going, she has financial problems, and therefore these are all the precursors for somebody that is suicidal in nature.
The final battle is over controversial blood evidence.
There was no blood spray found on the wall.
And the theory is that something or somebody, most probably Phil Spector, was blocking that blood from coming out in a certain direction.
Drops of Lana Clarkson's blood was found on the white jacket Phil Spector had been seen wearing earlier that evening.
Using the same evidence, the defense draws the exact opposite conclusion.
They're going to stipulate to the fact that because there was so little blood splatter evidence on Phil Spector, that therefore he couldn't have been standing in front.
Prosecutors can't prove the murder weapon, a .38 Colt Cobra, was in Spector's hands, but they present evidence suggesting he had attempted to clean the gun after it had been fired.
There was blood found smeared on the Colt that was used in the shooting, which would indicate possibly that Phil Spector had tried to wipe off any fingerprints.
It's something that wouldn't happen at suicide. You wouldn't have that chance. The pistol's simply going to fall to the floor.
On September 10th, 2007, the case goes to the jury. Deliberations take 2 weeks.
The jury comes back 10-2 in favor of conviction, but you need a unanimous jury.
The judge declares a mistrial, but prosecutors say they'll retry the case.
On October 29, 2008, the prosecution begins the second trial in the case of Phil Spector. This time, the defense has a crucial witness in the mother of Lana Clarkson.
But the strategy backfires. Instead of painting her daughter as despondent over her acting career, Donna Clarkson provides testimony that directly refutes the idea that Lana was suicidal.
Lana Clarkson's mom flipped the tables on the defense during her testimony when she spoke of a trip that she had taken with her daughter to purchase new shoes for this job that she had at the House of Blues.
The prosecution, rightly so, said that a person that's suicidal doesn't go out and buy 6 pairs of shoes when you're going to be working at the House of Blues. It doesn't fit, it doesn't jive.
On April 30th, 2009, the jury finds Phil Spector guilty of second-degree murder in the death of Lana Clarkson.
The defendant is sentenced to the term required by law, 15 years to life.
Phil Spector, for his part, shows no visible reaction when the jury's verdict comes back.
Spector gets the maximum allowable sentence. His health has been failing ever since.
Due to polyps that were found on his throat, he can no longer speak.
The man who created the wall of sound now languishes behind a wall of silence.
Just because somebody's been famous, just because they have money, doesn't mean you go with them. And Lana Clarkson had no idea what she was getting into.
Wichita, Kansas, Tuesday, January 15th, 1974, 7 p.m. Joseph and Julie Otero are cleaning up after dinner. 9-year-old Joseph Jr. opens the back door to let the dog out. Suddenly, a stranger appears out of the darkness and enters the house. The intruder pulls a gun on the boy, his parents, and his 11-year-old sister, Josephine.
And he claimed that he was a fugitive from justice, and he just wanted food and a vehicle so he can get away.
He's wanted, he's on the run, he's hungry, he has a gun, and what he tells them is, I have to tie you up. He's basically allaying all their fears that any harm could come to them. All he wants to do, from everything that he's given them, is to simply get away. He just wants to ensure that they're not going to call. What has he done? He's deflected. He's taken all their natural fears, natural instincts to fight back, and simply deflected them by telling him, hey, I'm hot, I'm wanted, I'm on the lam, I'm packing heat, I gotta get out of here.
I took him back to the bedroom. At that time, I tied him up.
Unfortunately for the Otero family, once they're all secure, they're all bound up, he methodically begins to kill each and every single one of them.
First, he strangles the parents, but they don't die. He murders both the children and then returns to Joseph and Julie Otero.
He uses ropes as ligatures, and then he also takes plastic bags, placing them over there to ensure that they're total oxygen deprivation.
The killer escapes undetected. 15-year-old Charlie and 13-year-old Carmen come home to find their entire family murdered.
The police arrived at the scene, and they found the only thing taken from the house was a watch and a radio. At the time, there were no DNA databases, and there was no forensic evidence that led them to any suspects.
Thursday, April 4th, 1974, 1 p.m. 21-year-old college student Catherine Bright comes home. Her younger brother Kevin is with her. Inside, a madman is waiting. He's been stalking Catherine for weeks and is not expecting her brother to be there. When the siblings enter the house, he emerges from one of the bedrooms.
They're confronted by a man who is wielding 2 guns. And he simply tells them he's wanted, all he wants is a car, he needs cash, he needs to get away. He forces Kevin to tie his sister up in one bedroom, and then he takes Kevin in another bedroom and ties him up as well.
The intruder attempts to choke Kevin with a knotted stocking.
But he's unable to because now Kevin is fighting back violently.
He broke his bonds and he jumped up real quick like. I pulled my gun and quickly shot him. I hit him in the head. I could see the blood and I thought he was down and was out.
Then he heads to the other bedroom.
The intruder now attempts to strangle Catherine, but she's able to fight back. As he's struggling with Catherine, he hears movement in the other room.
The assailant heads back, determined to finish off Kevin Bright. But the 19-year-old won't give up.
Kevin valiantly fights back. He managed to arrest control of one of the guns.
Kevin pulls the trigger twice, but the gun misfires. The attacker regains the upper hand and shoots Kevin in the face with his other gun. This time, Kevin pretends to be dead.
The intruder now moves back to Catherine.
I was basically losing control. The strangulation wasn't working on her, and I used a knife on her. I stabbed her 2 or 3 times.
The gunman soon realizes that Kevin Bright has escaped, so he flees the scene. Kevin returns with help for his sister, but it's too late.
Unfortunately, she succumbs to her wounds and she dies several hours later.
Kevin is able to provide law enforcement with a description of his sister's killer.
5'10" male, about 180 pounds, 25 to 30 years old, with a mustache and dark hair.
In early 1974, police in Wichita, Kansas are working 2 unsolved murder cases: the quadruple homicide of the Otero family and the slaying of Catherine Bright. In both incidents, The victims are bound, tortured, and strangled.
The killer wanted attention and recognition for his crimes. So he walks into a Wichita library and leaves a letter in a mechanical engineering book, and then calls a local newspaper and tells them where it is.
The letter includes details about the Otero murders that authorities haven't released to the public.
In the letter, he says, "You'll probably call me psychotic with a sexual hang-up." He is sexually aroused by causing pain and suffering of other people.
The killer also signs his name, saying that he wants to be redressed and known henceforth as the BTK Strangler. BTK standing for bind them, torture them, kill them.
3 years pass with no movement in the case. Then, BTK strikes again. Thursday, March 17th, 1977, 11:55 a.m. 26-year-old Shirley Vian is home with her 3 kids when a man knocks on the front door, claiming to be a private detective. 5-year-old Steve opens the door and unknowingly lets in a monster. Once inside, BTK pulls down the blinds, turns off the TV, and pulls a pistol from a shoulder holster.
He locks the 3 children in the bathroom, and then he attacks their mother.
She got sick, threw up, got her a glass of water, comforted her a little bit, and then I went ahead and tied her up, and then put a bag over her head and strangled her.
The children manage to escape. They get out. Unfortunately, what they discover is their mother's corpse.
Over the next 9 months, as cops investigate dead-end leads, BTK plans his next murder, which he calls Project Fox Hunt. Thursday, December 8th, 1977, 9:30 p.m. 25-year-old jewelry store clerk Nancy Fox arrives home from work. She has no idea her phone line has been cut, and BTK is waiting in her kitchen.
I got on top of her, and I had a belt. I took the belt and then strangled her with a belt at that time.
BTK actually places a phone call to emergency services telling the exact location of her body.
3 years, 7 murders, and investigators still have no suspects. But a distinct MO has emerged for the man who calls himself BTK.
We're able to put together a profile of who this person is psychologically. It's clear that he's organized.
He's bringing all the ties, the ligatures, the plastic bags. He's bringing the guns.
He likes to torture the victims, and he strangles them. He wants to actually have his hands or a ligature around their neck and watch the life flow out of them.
For some reason, that sexually excites or arouses him.
He also collected souvenirs or trophies from the victims that would help him relive the fantasy of committing these crimes.
But killing is not enough for BTK. He craves attention and starts to reach out to local media.
January 31st, 1978, the newspaper receives the poem relating to the death of Shirley Vian.
But the newspaper doesn't print BTK's poem.
Obviously upset that he's not being given the recognition that he feels he deserves, he decides to write a letter to a local TV news station. And in that letter he says, "How many do I have to kill before I get my name in the paper or some national attention?"
He takes responsibility for the Vian and Fox murders, and he compares himself to notorious serial killers like Bundy and Son of Sam.
With BTK on the loose, the city of Wichita is in a total panic.
Women were afraid to enter their houses alone, afraid to have windows in their backyards, so they were boarded up and nailed shut.
Gun sales have spiked, pepper spray, people trying to take self-defense classes.
So far, only younger victims have been targeted. But Wichita's older citizens are about to get a bone-chilling wake-up call.
On April 28, 1979, BTK waited in the home of 63-year-old Anna Williams. She never showed up at home, and he left.
But he decides, in his frustration, to leave her a note, to let her know he's been there. And to paraphrase it, he said, "Be glad you weren't here because I was."
Then, BTK gives Wichita a surprise no one sees coming.
In the 1980s, BTK stopped sending letters and trying to get recognition for his criminal activities.
He's gone deep underground.
From 1974 to 1979, a sadistic killer terrorizes Wichita, Kansas. Then, he mysteriously disappears. Over the next 25 years, residents and law enforcement relax, believing the horrors of the BTK Strangler are over. But they are dead wrong.
In 2004, the Wichita Eagle newspaper marked the 30th anniversary of the beginning of BTK's killing spree. At that time, the killer decided to reinitiate his letter-writing campaign. He got hungry for the attention again.
BTK sends letters and packages to the media and the police, containing photos of his victims and photocopies of items he took from them. One package sent to the Wichita Eagle contains a copy of a driver's license belonging to a woman named Vicki Wegerly, along with 3 photos of her dead, posed body. It's sickening proof that BTK never stopped killing in 1979.
On September 16, 1986, Vicki Wegerly was found strangled. As with the other cases, the one item which was missing was Wegerly's driver's license.
They never connected this crime to BTK, mainly because he had gone silent about half a decade before.
Back in the spotlight, BTK continues to seek notoriety.
Other packages, other letters are being sent. And what's happening now is the entire town of Wichita is back on edge again.
On July 22, 2004, Wichita police form a multi-agency task force to catch BTK. Soon, BTK's attention-seeking efforts backfire.
In February 2005, BTK leaves a package for the police and notifies them that it's at a Home Depot.
Obviously, this guy forgot about one thing: video cameras.
They then looked at the security cameras and found footage of a man driving around the parking lot a number of times.
The vehicle in the surveillance video is registered to 59-year-old Dennis Rader. After 30 years, Wichita finally has a viable suspect. But who is he?
There's nothing about him that's out of the ordinary.
Dennis Rader led a life that was seemingly normal. He had a wife and 2 kids. He went to church on Sunday. He was active in the community.
Investigators want to know, is Dennis Rader leading a double life? And could he be the BTK Strangler? With his next move, Rader seems to leave little doubt.
Rader contacted the police department and asked if they'd be able to trace a floppy disk if he sent it to them.
Police assure him that there's no way that they can possibly trace the floppy disk.
The cops have lied to BTK, confident they'll be able to trace any information embedded in a floppy disk.
On February 16, 2005, BTK sends a floppy disk to a local news station. The police trace the floppy disk to a church which Dennis Rader had been a member for 30 years.
There were documents from the church, and Dennis Rader's name was actually hidden on that disk, and they were able to uncover it.
As president of the Congregational Council, Rader is one of the few people who has access to the church's computer. But none of this proves he's responsible for the horrific killings. In February 2005, police in Wichita, Kansas finally identified Dennis Rader, the man they believe is the serial killer BTK. But they need hard evidence before they can arrest him. Advances in forensic technology give cops the exact ammunition they need to blow the case wide open.
They obtain a search warrant for DNA, and they're able to obtain DNA from Dennis Rader's daughter, and they can make a match between her DNA and his DNA.
Police have BTK's DNA because he left semen at 2 crime scenes back in the 1970s. And just like they suspected, it comes back as a match to Dennis Rader's daughter.
This was the first solid forensic evidence linking Dennis Rader to the string of serial homicides. Nobody could believe that this mild-mannered family man, father of 2, could possibly be this killer.
Friday, February 25th, 2005, 12 p.m. Cops prepare to move on Dennis Rader. They know the 59-year-old works in the city compliance office and that he always goes home for lunch. When Rader drives home as planned, police set up near his house and execute a traffic stop.
Dennis Rader is finally apprehended. He's simply pulled over, no resistance, no nothing.
With Rader in custody, law enforcement conducts a massive search of his home.
They descend upon his house and literally tear it apart. They ultimately are able to retrieve a computer and a pair of black nylon pantyhose.
But Rader himself actually led them to what he called the mother lode.
Rader tells detectives to check his locker at work.
What did they find? Everything. All his trophies.
Newspaper clippings, articles of clothing and driver's license from the victims, copies of the communications that he had sent to the media and to the police, as well as chapters of a book that he called the BTK story.
Investigators also discover a cache of Rader's sexually explicit drawings, which feature scenes of bondage and torture. Police interrogate Dennis Rader for 32 hours.
At first, Rader talks about BTK in the third person, but eventually he comes around and gives a complete confession.
Rader stuns detectives by admitting to 2 additional killings.
One of those people is 53-year-old Maureen Hedge.
Kind of like the others, she was chosen. I went through the different phases, stalking phase, and since she lived down the street from me, I could watch the coming and going quite easily.
On April 27, 1985, Rader cuts the phone line to Maureen Hedge's house and pries open her back door with a screwdriver.
He strangles her, kills her, drags her body out, puts it in the trunk of his car, and then drives to church. He takes the body of Maureen Hedge to the basement, the church basement, and takes photographs down there.
He then takes her body and throws her back into the trunk of the car and then dumps her body in a ditch nearby.
The photos Rader took of Maureen Hedge are among the items found in his work locker. But he's not done telling cops what they don't know about him.
On January 19, 1991, Rader throws a concrete block through the window of Dolores Davis's home. He then breaks in and uses his old line about being a fugitive and just wanting food and a way to get away.
Rader handcuffs the 62-year-old, strangles her to death, and places a mask over her face.
One of the explanations he gave to police was that as he got older, he didn't have the physicality to control the younger women, so he picked older women to victimize.
Wichita, Kansas, Tuesday, March 1st, 2005. Dennis Rader is charged with 10 counts of first-degree murder. Bail is set at $10 million, $1 million for each murder. His attorney enters a plea of not guilty.
June 27, 2005, Rader suddenly changes his plea. He goes from not guilty to, I'm going to plead guilty to all these counts.
Prosecutors force Rader to detail every gruesome aspect of his crimes to ensure he'll never see daylight again.
Rader sits in court in front of the victims, the families, and he now recounts every single detail of every single homicide.
I waited till wee hours in the morning and then proceeded to sneak into her bedroom and flip the lights on real quick, like, or I think the bathroom lights. I didn't want to flip her lights on, and she screamed, and I jumped on the bed and strangled her manually.
On August 18, 2005, Dennis Rader receives 10 consecutive life sentences. Stanford Avenue, Baton Rouge, Louisiana, Sunday, September 23, 2001, 12 a.m. 41-year-old nurse Gina Green returns home from a night out with her sister. She tries to go to sleep, but can't completely relax. 3:47 a.m. The security system goes off, startling Green out of bed. She checks all the windows and doors, but nothing seems out of the ordinary. Nearby, cloaked in darkness, a predator watches. Angry, the alarm foiled his plans, but he'll return the following night to execute his sick fantasy.
On September 24, 2001, Gina Green is home alone. Somehow, a man slips into her home and confronts her in the hallway.
She's taken to the bedroom, she's beaten, she's raped, and she's strangled to death.
The following afternoon, after Green fails to show up for work, a coworker stops by. He discovers her lifeless body in the bedroom and calls 911. Homicide detectives arrive on the scene and immediately recognize signs of a violent struggle.
Gina's earrings and shoes are strewn in different rooms, and a clump of hair lies on the floor.
Shorts, a cell phone, and a purse are missing.
Just days after the murder, investigators locate Green's missing cell phone by a warehouse 5 miles from her home.
They were able to recover the purse, the shorts, and the cell phone dumped behind a trash bin.
Unfortunately, none of this evidence leads detectives to any particular suspect, so the case was treated as a one-off murder.
Highway 1, Addis, Louisiana, Monday, January 14th, 2002, 11:50 a.m. Geraldine DeSoto is home alone getting ready to go on a job interview when she hears a knock at the door. The 21-year-old has no idea the man on her front porch is a stalker who's been passing by her house every day, so she lets him in.
When her husband returns home around 7 p.m., he finds her body lying in a pool of blood.
She's been beaten and stabbed multiple times in a very, very violent manner. She's also been stomped. Apparently, there's bloody boot prints that are found there as well.
Investigators find no evidence of sexual assault.
When they look in the palm of her hand, what they're able to see is she's got broken fingernails. Her fist is clenched.
They thought maybe she had used it to fight him off, and they collected her fingernail clippings to determine whether or not the subject's DNA could be found underneath.
Months would pass before law enforcement connects the DNA found under Geraldine DeSoto's fingernails to her killer. Meanwhile, the Baton Rouge Police Department is now dealing with 2 murders within the span of 4 months, and another woman has already been marked for death.
In September 2001, Charlotte Pace lived just 3 doors down from Gina Green. She was so traumatized by Gina's murder that she actually moved to try to get as far away as she could from this scene of the horror.
Charlotte Avenue, Baton Rouge, Friday, May 31st, 2002, 12:30 p.m. Charlotte returns home from the car wash and is eating a sandwich on the couch when there's a knock at the door. The man on the other side seems nice, but he's been studying her for months, waiting for the perfect opportunity to strike.
She's attacked, she's raped, she is brutally beaten, very savage, extremely violent.
Around 2 p.m., Charlotte Pace's roommate comes home and makes the sickening discovery.
Charlotte's nude body is discovered on the floor in her bedroom. Everything's covered in blood. Blood spray all over the place. She was stabbed 81 times between screwdrivers and a knife. In addition, her throat has been slashed all the way across, and her skull has been crushed as well.
By the summer of 2002, southern Louisiana is in the midst of yet another killing spree.
There are 60 unsolved murders of women in Baton Rouge since 1985. Because of the recent uptick in rape homicides, investigators form a multi-agency homicide task force. Based on demographics and victimology, the FBI made a determination that the killer would be white. A 25 to 35-year-old male who's physically fit and strong. The task force actually put together a composite sketch showing a white male with a long nose and long face.
When the sketch goes live, tips pour in from all over the region.
A tip comes in from an individual who states that he saw a white pickup truck driven by a white male along I-10 between Baton Rouge and Lafayette. The tipster said it looked like the female passenger was dead.
Law enforcement will remain on the lookout for the white pickup. In the meantime, because they already have the killer's DNA on record, police launch a DNA dragnet.
They tested 1,000 men. All of them were white males. None of them were a match.
Jeffrey Broussard Road, Breaux Bridge, Louisiana, Tuesday, July 9th, 2002, 11:30 a.m. 46-year-old nurse Diane Alexander is home getting ready for work. Her husband, a delivery truck driver, is away on a run. There's a knock at the door. The man outside tells Alexander he's lost and needs directions.
He asks if he can use her phone, but he also asks her if her husband is home. And she says no, she's alone. He instantly turns, he does a 180.
The man forces his way into the mobile home, grabs Diane by the throat, and threatens her with a knife.
He attempts to rape her, but he's unable to sexually perform. Out of frustration and rage, he now takes a telephone cord. Not only does he beat her now, he also strangles her as well.
Diane Alexander is fighting for her life. Then, something unexpected happens.
Diane's son Herman arrives home and the attacker flees. And one thing he's able to say is that he wasn't driving a white pickup truck.
The unidentified vehicle that he saw is a gold vehicle. It has a sticker that says Hampton, and it also has a dent on the front hood. There was a beige telephone cord that was hanging out of the window.
Paramedics rush Alexander to the hospital. She's too badly injured to give police a description of her attacker. But investigators find valuable evidence at the crime scene.
We have DNA transfer onto her dress.
The DNA will take weeks to analyze. Briarwood Place, Baton Rouge, Friday, July 12, 2002, 9:45 p.m. 44-year-old Pamela Kinnemore returns home from a long day working at her antique shop. Her husband won't be back till late. Kinnemore draws a bath and begins to relax. She's completely unaware that she left her house keys in the back door.
At approximately 11:45, Byron Kinnemore arrives at his Baton Rouge home. He's fully expecting to be greeted by his wife, Pamela, and yet when he enters through the door, it's eerily silent.
He looks around the house, but can't find his wife, Pamela.
He walks into the bathroom and he sees the bathtub full of water, but no body. He walks into their bedroom, and here he begins to notice spots of blood. He starts to notice the room itself is slightly disheveled. Something's terribly, terribly wrong.
Cops launch a missing persons investigation. But 4 days later, just west of Baton Rouge, a survey crew finds a badly decomposed, nude body in the water underneath Whiskey Bay Bridge.
The corpse is identified as Pamela Kinnemore. She's been raped, her throat is slit open, she's been strangled.
A few hundred feet from Pamela's body, the detectives find a beige telephone cord. This is the same telephone cord that was cut from Diane Alexander's home. And the DNA that was recovered from Pamela's body matched the DNA from 3 other murders. So finally, the police are able to confirm that a serial killer was working in Baton Rouge.
But who is this ruthless criminal who killed Gina Green, Geraldine DeSoto, Charlotte Pace, and now Pamela Kinnemore? The answer could lie with Diane Alexander, the only woman to face the killer and live to talk about it.
July 15, 2002. Finally, Diane Alexander is able to give to the detectives a very comprehensive, extremely detailed descriptor of the suspect.
He had neatly trimmed hair, a pencil-thin mustache, and most critically, he was African American.
A composite sketch is generated by law enforcement where Alexander lives. It's a sharp contrast to the FBI profile, which predicted that the suspect is a white male. But it will take several months for the new sketch to make its way into the hands of task force investigators. So for the time being, the attack on Diane Alexander is being treated as an unrelated crime. By the fall of 2002, DNA testing links a single killer to the brutal murders of 4 women in Baton Rouge, Louisiana.
Everybody's in a high state of alert. We have pepper spray being sold, self-defense items being sold, guns are being bought.
Making matters worse, the Special Task Force is not collaborating with the local police department in Zachary, Louisiana, which has been tracking these killings from the beginning.
Although the task force seems to be holding on to the impression that a white male has been committing these serial rapes, the fact is that the Zachary Police Department believed that the same African-American male who committed the crimes against Diane Alexander was actually responsible for all of these rape murders.
For Zachary PD, one name tops the short list of suspects: Derek Todd Lee.
Why? Because he has a history of peeping and breaking and entering in that particular area.
But who exactly is this man Zachary police are convinced is a serial killer on the loose?
He's a big man. He's 6'1", about 210, 220, physically fit, very imposing, and yet that's not the aura which he generates. Nobody comes away with the impression of he's capable of being sadistic or mean or brutally violent.
He had a lot of struggles as he was growing up. He had a very low IQ. He was a loner.
His stepfather, unfortunately, is a very, very harsh disciplinarian, very much centered on Bible studies and corporal punishment.
Lee dropped out of high school and drifted from job to job throughout the 80s.
In 1988, Derek Todd Lee marries Jacqueline Sims, father of 2 kids, provides for them. But on the other hand, he's got a dark side that he's hiding. He's actually doing precursor crimes like peeping and torturing dogs and cats. He's beating his wife, and he violated a protective order. He's not the man he presents himself to be.
In the 90s, Lee spent time in and out of prison for crimes ranging from trespassing to burglary to stalking. With his checkered background, Derek Todd Lee seems like exactly the kind of person who could perpetrate these heinous murders. But the task force continues to rely on the FBI profile, which indicates that the unknown killer is a white male. West Gardner Street, Grand Coteau, Louisiana, Thursday, November 21st, 2002. 23-year-old Trinisha Colum is at St. Charles Borromeo Cemetery, visiting her mother's gravesite.
Afterwards, she returned to her car and was never seen again.
The following morning, Colum's keys, wallet, and ID are found inside her car, which is still in the exact place where she parked it.
Just 2 days later, her body was found by a hunter in a wooded area. She was beaten and raped and murdered. Forensic pathologists took DNA swabs, and they were able to match those DNA swabs with the other recent killings.
Colum is murder victim number 5, connected by DNA to the same killer. Lieutenant David McDavid of the Zachary PD remains convinced the perpetrator is Derek Todd Lee. In Zachary, Louisiana, a suburb 14 miles northeast of Baton Rouge, there were a series of unsolved homicides that McDavid strongly believes were committed by Lee.
August 23rd, 1992, Connie Warner vanishes from her home. 11 days later, her body is discovered in a ditch by a truck driver. April 18th, 1998, 28-year-old Randy Meebier was snatched away from her home. Her body will never be found.
Zachary police questioned Derek Todd Lee in both cases.
There is not enough substantial evidence that link him to any of those incidents, therefore they cannot charge him with any of those crimes.
Lieutenant McDavid fails to convince his fellow officers that Lee killed then and that he's killing now. The lack of cooperation between law enforcement agencies causes the investigation to stall, but the killer is still active, trolling for his next victim. Dodson Avenue, Baton Rouge, Monday, March 3rd, 2003, 4:30 p.m. Carrie Lynn Yoder, a 26-year-old doctoral student at LSU, returns home from running errands.
She calls her boyfriend just to talk, just to chat, and it's the last time she's ever heard from him.
2 days later, after Carrie fails to answer her phone or return calls, her boyfriend stops by her house.
When he arrives, he finds the back door open.
He walks inside and he sees blood on her purse, which is still there, and he finds some objects that are slightly askew.
The search for Carrie Lynn Yoder will end just 10 days later in a place that's already familiar to homicide detectives.
A commercial fisherman discovers her badly decomposed body only 10 yards from where Pamela Kinnemore's body was discovered in Whiskey Bay. It's the same dumping location.
When the DNA analysis came back, it matched the profile of the other 6 victims.
By the spring of 2003, police in Baton Rouge, Louisiana, have 6 unsolved murder cases involving local women all killed by the same person.
In April 2003, Zachary PD receives a complaint from a woman who's jogging and she feels that she's being stalked. They go to a residence, they look, they find boot prints, they're right by the window, and it's going to be very consistent with an individual standing outside a window who is looking into the window.
They figure that their local peeping Tom, Derek Todd Lee, may be in action again.
Fearing Lee has marked his next victim, the Zachary police chief makes a bold move. Without notifying the task force, he gets a court order to collect a DNA sample from Derek Todd Lee. Highway 61, St. Francisville, Louisiana, Monday, May 5th, 2003. Police visit Lee at his house. They swab his mouth for DNA and immediately send the sample to the state crime lab.
And amazingly, the DNA from Derek Todd Lee matches all 6 murders.
Police move in to make an arrest.
The police did not keep a very tight surveillance on Derek Todd Lee, and when they go to the house to arrest him, he's fled.
The suspected killer of 6 women is now a fugitive.
The FBI now announces we have a nationwide manhunt for Mr. Lee.
On May 26, 2003, Lee calls a woman he knows in Baton Rouge. Investigators are able to trace the call to a phone in Atlanta, Georgia.
The police immediately released the picture of Derek Todd Lee.
2 days later, law enforcement gets a tip that he might be at a local tire shop.
They rush in there, they look to no avail, they don't find him in there. However, one of the members of the fugitive task force had the acumen to look beyond the perimeter they had set up. And who do they see? Derek Todd Lee, standing there talking to a woman. Most probably it was going to be his very next victim.
Lee is quickly apprehended. He's immediately transferred back to Baton Rouge and charged with the murders of 6 women. He pleads not guilty to all of the charges. Prior to trial, Lee's defense team presents arguments that their client is not mentally competent to stand trial.
Psychological testing is performed. He's pegged with an IQ of approximately 65.
Even though an IQ that low is often classified as mild mental retardation, a judge finds Lee competent to stand trial.
So he is going to be tried separately for each 6 murders. The first trial, August 5th, 2004, is for the murder of Geraldine DeSoto.
The trial lasts just 5 days and revolves around DNA evidence linking Lee to the crime.
On August 10th, 2004, the jury takes less than 2 hours to secure a conviction.
For the murder of Geraldine DeSoto, Lee gets life in prison. 1 month later, he's back in court, facing first-degree murder charges for the killing of Charlotte Pace. The death penalty is on the table. This time, in addition to DNA, prosecutors have a special weapon, the lone woman to survive one of Derek Todd Lee's alleged attacks.
Diane Alexander will become the voice for all these voiceless women. The prosecution's case is so solid that the defense does not call one single witness.
On October 12, 2004, a jury finds Lee guilty of first-degree murder. He's sentenced to death by lethal injection. Kent, Washington, Sunday, August 15th, 1982, 1 p.m. A fisherman rafting down the Green River spots something odd in the water.
He sees what appears to be a body lodged beneath a rock in the river.
It's a woman, and she's dead.
This is somewhat shocking, but what's even more shocking is he discovers not just one, but 2 bodies.
The bodies belong to 31-year-old Marcia Chapman, who vanished 2 weeks earlier, and 16-year-old Opal Mills, who went missing 3 days prior. Police search the area for clues, unsure if they're investigating accidental drownings or murders.
The river moves and transfers evidence. So you look on the banks of the river, and that's where, amazingly enough, law enforcement officers discovered yet a 3rd body.
Cops identify the 3rd body as 17-year-old Cynthia Hines, who disappeared 4 days earlier. Authorities will soon realize that 3 additional women have been disposed of in the same geographical area.
It appears as though all the women have been strangled to death, and they're all roughly the same age. What they have now is a serial killer on their hands.
One, the media dubs the Green River Killer. The Kings County Sheriff's Department forms a Green River Killer Task Force.
Almost immediately, the head of the task force reaches out to the FBI.
The Bureau assigns top profilers John Douglas and Bob Keppel to the case.
When they made the announcement that there was a serial killer loose, they got a flood of tips, overwhelming the small set of resources that they had.
Despite the setbacks, the task force does manage a key breakthrough.
Investigators are able to determine all the women found knew each other. They knew each other from their trade. They were prostitutes working the Seattle SeaTac area.
The killer is targeting prostitutes on a particularly seedy 10-mile stretch of the Pacific Highway between 139th and 272nd Street.
And that becomes ground zero for the investigation.
Cops interview hundreds of women who work the SeaTac Strip.
Basically, they were asking these prostitutes for any Johns that were particularly violent or really stood out to them.
In one particular interview, investigators interviewed a young prostitute who had filed a rape report against one of her clients, claiming that not only was she raped, but he made reference to the Green River murders.
Investigators flood the streets in search of the rapist.
And on August 20th, 1982, they actually make an arrest and publicly announce they have a suspect in custody.
But just days later, the task force goes live with another announcement. The suspect is not their man. The next day, the killer returns to his hunting ground, Pacific Highway, and abducts 16-year-old Terry Milligan. Police won't find her remains for another 20 months. In the summer of 1982, a madman turns the area surrounding Seattle, Washington's airport into a killing field. That September, they encounter 21-year-old Susan Widmark, who tells them a frightening story.
Widmark claims that she was solicited by a John driving a blue and white truck.
He took her to a desolate road and raped her violently at gunpoint. Then he tells her to get redressed as he drives away, and he's talking about the Green River killings. Fearing for her life, she jumped out of the truck while he stopped at a light, and she got a couple of numbers off his license plate.
Widmark is not this John's only victim.
Deborah Estes was a 15-year-old who was walking down the street hitchhiking when a man in a blue and white truck picked her up.
She was driven to a desolate area where she was raped. Afterwards, as they were driving away, he handcuffed her, dropped her off, and had her flee into a wooded area.
Within weeks, police pull over a blue and white truck and arrest a local butcher named Charles Clinton Clark.
Clark is known to frequent the strip and have sex with prostitutes. Authorities show Clark's driver's license photo to the prostitutes who had been raped, and both positively identified Clark as being the individual who had raped them.
Detectives search Clark's truck and residence.
They find the 2 handguns that were used in the commission of the rapes.
Clark actually admitted to raping these 2 victims, but he vehemently denied that he was the Green River killer.
While Clark is in custody, 19-year-old Mary Meehan vanishes from the strip. Her disappearance is proof that Clark is not the Green River killer. The real murderer has claimed 3 more victims: 17-year-old Shonda Summers, 23-year-old Denise Bush, and 18-year-old Shirley Sherrill. The task force generates a composite sketch from a witness who saw Sherrill talking to a white male in a pickup truck before she vanished. But the sketch doesn't yield any new suspects.
The investigation hits a dead end.
Seattle, Washington, Sunday, April 17, 1983, 10 p.m. 16-year-old Kimmy Kai Pitzer is out on the streets hooking.
Her pimp sees her get inside a dark pickup truck with a camper shell on the back.
The truck drives away into the night. Kimmy's pimp waits for 7 hours, but she never returns.
Her pimp contacts the police, and he describes to police a man with a pockmarked face.
Cops generate a composite sketch from the pimp's description, but there are no immediate matches. Saturday, April 30th, 1983, 9:30 p.m. 18-year-old Marie Malvar is walking the streets. Her boyfriend, who's also her pimp, is in a car close by keeping watch when a dark-colored pickup approaches.
The boyfriend watches her get into the truck. She appears to get into an argument with the driver, and then suddenly the truck takes off.
Malvar's boyfriend takes off after the truck.
But he loses the guy when he gets stuck at a stoplight. And that's the last time he ever sees Maria Malvar alive.
Immediately, Malvar's boyfriend contacts the police, but there's really not a whole lot they can do at this point.
3 days later, Malvar's boyfriend and family are out looking for her in the same area where she was abducted.
And that's when they see the truck again.
At that point, they follow the truck to a house and they call the police.
Police respond to the home.
They interview the resident. He denies ever knowing Malvar, ever seeing Malvar. Police believe what he has to say.
The owner of the house and truck is a 34-year-old man named Gary Ridgway. By the end of spring 1983, a serial killer has murdered 26 women in Seattle, Washington, disposing of their bodies in remote locations within a 7-mile radius of the Green River.
Even though the largest manhunt in Seattle history is being mounted against the Green River killer, it doesn't slow the guy down at all.
That May, after 2 young women, Kimmy Pitzer and Marie Malvar, are abducted, police question a 34-year-old truck painter named Gary Ridgway. He denies any involvement, but Ridgway's no stranger to law enforcement. In July 1980, he was arrested for choking a prostitute near SeaTac Airport. Charges filed against him were later dropped.
He gets out of it by claiming that it was self-defense, that she had bitten him and he was just defending himself. Somehow they believed him.
2 years later, Ridgway would have 2 more run-ins with the law. The first charge was soliciting a prostitute, for which he was eventually found guilty. And the second one was soliciting an undercover police officer who was working as a prostitute.
On February 23, 1983, Port of Seattle police stopped Ridgway in his maroon truck north of the airport. 18-year-old prostitute Kelly McGinnis was in the passenger seat. Ridgway told authorities they were on a date and was let go. McGinnis would disappear 4 months later. Her body has never been found. Could Gary Ridgway be the Green River Killer? His pickup truck is identical to the vehicle described in the abduction of 2 women, Marie Malvar and Kimmy Kai Pitzer.
You have this vehicle match, a great piece of evidence, but the task force, they're overwhelmed with data. And at that point, they just weren't able to connect the dots.
By the end of 1983, a staggering 38 women have fallen prey to the Green River Killer. But the unknown murderer has changed his disposal patterns.
Instead of along the Green River, now he's concentrating his dumping ground in and around Star Lake, which is right near SeaTac Airport.
In April 1984, cops discover the remains of 4 women in the same area along Star Lake Road. All 4, 16-year-old Terry Milligan, 18-year-old Alma Smith, 17-year-old Dolores Williams, and 17-year-old Sandra Gabbert, disappeared from areas along Pacific Highway.
When investigators found the skeletal remains, they also moved some brush aside and found a shoe impression. An analysis of the shoe print determines that it's a men's shoe, approximately size 10 or 11. So here we are now, 3 years into this investigation, and we have 1 shoe print so far to go on.
That November, in a bizarre twist, investigators begin consulting with notorious serial murderer Ted Bundy, who's locked away at Rayford Prison in Florida.
Bundy believes that the recent disposal sites are probably closer to where the offender lives. When they mapped out all the areas where they found the bodies, it's basically a rough triangle, and they believed that he may live or work within that triangle.
There is one suspect who lives within the red zone, Gary Ridgway. The same Gary Ridgway cops briefly questioned in the 1983 disappearance of Marie Malvar.
Gary Ridgway is basically raised in the Seattle area. His father was a bus driver, and occasionally he would tell him about what he would call whores who would get on the buses and tell his son to stay away from him.
He had a very strange relationship with his mother. That is, that he was sexually attracted to her at the same time that he hated her.
When he was 16 years of age, he was able to lure a 6-year-old boy into the woods. Once they were secluded together, he took out a knife and stabbed the young man.
He said he just wanted to see what it would be like to kill somebody.
After a brief stint in the Navy, Ridgway married the first of his 3 wives in 1972. But it was during his second marriage, which lasted from 1973 to 1981, where Ridgway started to veer off.
Gary became a Bible-thumping religious convert. He would preach to people, he would read the Bible out loud at home and at work, he would go door to door.
On one hand, you have this fella who's leading this very pious life, but on the other hand, you have this dark side of him where he's doing just the opposite, frequenting prostitutes in the Seattle, Washington area.
Still, Ridgway blends into the middle-class neighborhood where he lives.
He was someone who held down a consistent job, someone who was married, and someone who could be your next-door neighbor.
Seattle, Washington, Monday, May 7, 1984. Investigators strap Gary Ridgway to a lie detector. They ask him just 3 questions, including whether or not he's ever caused the death of a prostitute. Ridgway answers no. The polygraph shows no deception. Ridgway will remain on law enforcement's radar for the next 3 years.
As a result of many interviews, investigators learn that prostitutes have seen this man on many occasions cruising the strip. And what investigators find extremely interesting is that he was absent on every day from his job whenever a prostitute disappeared.
The task force interviews Ridgway's second wife. She tells them that Gary liked to have sex in locations where Green River victims' bodies had been found. Kent, Washington, Wednesday, April 8, 1987. Police seize hundreds of items in a massive search of Gary Ridgway's home, work locker, and vehicles. They also collect a saliva sample from Ridgway and immediately send it to the lab for DNA analysis.
Unfortunately, at the time, the science wasn't that great, and they were not able to tie him by DNA to any of the victims in the Green River killings.
By 1988, the Green River Killer has strangled 41 women to death, and the task force is no closer to bringing him in. In December 1988, after months of investigating truck painter Gary Ridgway without making an arrest, law enforcement finally has a new suspect, 37-year-old pharmacology student William J. Stevens.
A series of tips were called in against Stevens based on the Crime Stopper reports. Stevens was on the run for 8 years after serving 2 years for burglary. Investigators delve into Stevens' past, and he's known to have a very strong contempt for prostitutes and has even talked about murdering them.
Police search Stevens' home.
In it, they find firearms, they find fraudulent credit cards that he's been using under assumed names, and they have found, amazingly enough, photographs of nude prostitutes.
They take him into custody, but the case quickly implodes.
His brother comes in with credit card evidence and travel records, and they prove airtight alibis that Stevens could not be the Green River Killer.
9 years and more than $15 million later, the task force disbands in 1991 without a single viable suspect in custody.
The largest manhunt in U.S. history, and it went nowhere.
The Green River case goes ice cold and remains dormant for 10 years until a new sheriff reopens the investigation in the spring of 2001.
With the advancement of new DNA technology, one of the first things they do is they take all the evidence and they resubmit it to the crime lab for DNA analysis. Among the first samples sent are samples that were recovered from 3 victims that were found between 1982 and 1983.
Authorities compare the samples to saliva collected back in 1987 from original suspect Gary Ridgway.
I was part of the cold case reevaluation of the Green River killings. And on September 10, 2001, the day before 9/11, we got the results from that DNA testing. All 3 samples matched Gary Ridgway.
Renton, Washington, Friday, November 30th, 2001. Cops arrest Gary Ridgway as he's driving home from work.
Ridgway is charged with the murders of Marcia Chapman, Opal Mills, Carol Christensen, and Cynthia Hines.
Law enforcement will spend the next 18 months building a case against Gary Ridgway. In June 2003, Ridgway strikes a deal with prosecutors to take the death penalty off the table.
As part of his plea bargain, he agrees to provide complete details concerning the murders and the location of his victims.
It takes 5 months and multiple interviews for Ridgway to debrief investigators on all of his crimes.
I only killed women that accepted the money.
Detectives get a clear, sick picture of a serial killer's M.O.
I thought I was doing you guys a favor. Killing prostitutes. Here, you guys can't control them, but I can.
He said he chose mainly prostitutes because he hated them.
Ridgway would target a prostitute, usually on Pacific Highway South, and watch her from a distance. Then he'd drive by, sometimes flashing money, and try to pick her up. To reduce suspicion, he'd often show his ID or pull out his wallet to reveal a picture of his son. Once a woman got in his truck, he would take her to his house or a wooded area and have sex with her. Most of the murders took place inside his house or one of his vehicles. He tells investigators that sometimes he took the victim's money, but he always took their jewelry.
Ridgway also admits that he went back to the disposal sites and had sex with some of his dead victims. And he buried them later to prevent him from going back and having sex with them again.
Through the summer and fall of 2003, Ridgway guides detectives around Seattle to several of the locations where he dumped bodies.
To Ridgway, they're throwaways, disposable humanity, and he considers killing these prostitutes as his career.
Seattle, Washington, Wednesday, November 5th, 2003. Gary Ridgway confesses in court to murdering 48 women.
At that time, it's the largest number of confirmed killings by a serial killer in the history of the United States. Gary Ridgway is sentenced to 48 consecutive life terms. In addition, he receives 480 years for tampering with evidence.
In February 2011, Ridgway pleads guilty to a 49th murder after the remains of Becky Marrero, who vanished in December 1982, were discovered. To date, Ridgway maintains that he killed between 75 and 80 women, but law enforcement has been unable to confirm the additional killings. Washington Township, Michigan, Sunday, February 4th, 2007. 34-year-old Tara Lynn Grant is packing to leave on a business trip. She's flying to Puerto Rico, where, as an executive for a multinational engineering firm, she typically spends 5 days a week on location.
So this is going to take her away from Michigan for quite a period of time, and it's constant. It's going to be gone for 5 days, back for 2, gone for 5 throughout the entire year.
With Tara consistently out of town, husband Stephen acts as Mr. Mom for their 2 children, Lindsay and Ian.
Stephen Grant and Tara Lynn are seemingly the perfect modern-day family. He's the stay-at-home dad, while she's the successful businesswoman who's climbing the corporate ladder and the main breadwinner. If you scratch the surface, a very different picture begins to emerge.
The frequent travel is wearing on the Grants' 11-year marriage.
Obviously, having her away puts a lot more pressure on him than he ever expected, and he is not able to cope with this in a very effective manner. In order to ease the burden on Stephen, they've hired a number of au pairs from Europe.
Tara Lynn returns from Puerto Rico on Friday, February 9th, 2007. According to Stephen, while she unpacks her bags, they get into an argument, and Tara leaves. Stephen spends the next few days calling Tara's cell phone and leaving frantic voicemails, but she never picks up. Wednesday, February 14th, 2007, 10 a.m. On the day when most couples celebrate their love, Stephen Grant walks into the Macomb County Sheriff's Department and reports his wife missing. He tells detectives he hadn't heard from her in 5 days.
5 days is a significant period of time, given the fact that she is a mum and just how committed she is to her job.
Investigators question Stephen about why he waited so long to report his wife missing. He tells them they had an argument and that he didn't file a missing persons report sooner because he was giving Tara time to cool off.
He tells them that she decided she's going to leave for Puerto Rico 1 day early to prep for a meeting, as she said. Approximately 20 minutes later, she packs her stuff, she leaves. She gets into a dark car at the end of a dark street and suddenly just disappears into the dark night.
But who was in the dark car? And could they have something to do with Tara's disappearance? Stephen tells authorities he thinks Tara's job may play a role in why she's gone missing.
He believes that his wife, who works for this company, an engineering firm, is involved in demilitarizing weapons of a chemical nature, and perhaps she was kidnapped by terrorists.
Though Stephen's theory seems far-fetched, police launch a missing persons investigation. That same evening, detectives pay a visit to the Grant home to gather more information.
There are a number of points that arouse suspicion by the police officers, and one of those key points, they try and have a conversation with the au pair, Verena, and she seems to be aloof and avoiding them.
The Verena, within 10 minutes after they're arriving there, leaves the location. That's a red flag to me, because obviously she knows something's up.
But what does the 19-year-old nanny know? Before investigators can question her, she leaves the Grant home. Within days, she moves back to Germany. In the meantime, police focus their attention on Stephen.
And already the police have a suspicion about him, and in particular, he has a cut on his nose.
He says that it basically occurred from metal shaving that got cut underneath a pair of safety glasses.
As officers photograph Stephen Grant in his kitchen, they notice other scratches and bruises. Investigators do a quick walkthrough of the Grant home. Nothing seems out of place, although many of Tara's belongings are still there.
In the master bedroom, they see that a lot of her clothes are untouched, her shoes are untouched. There's 3 pairs of glasses on the nightstand.
If you're going to go on a trip, you'd at least take 1 pair of glasses. They also notice that within the closet itself, everything is neatly arranged, there are no spaces, which would not denote any kind of clothing being removed and being packed for a subsequent trip.
Officers wonder if Tara ever left on another business trip. They're shocked when they enter the bathroom and find what looks like a blood stain on the floor.
Detectives know pretty much right now what that is, but they're going to ask him, what is it? And he said, well, it's, hair dye.
Despite their suspicions, law enforcement can't prove anything, so they conclude the walkthrough.
As they start to leave, Stephen turns to the detective and asks him, am I a primary suspect in this? Am I a suspect?
And the officer replies that if he were a suspect, he would be in jail. And it's at this point that he breaks down in tears. It's something that arouses suspicion within the police officers that there are more questions to be asked of Stephen Grant.
In February 2007, police in Macomb County, Michigan, are investigating the disappearance of Tara Lynn Grant, a working mom who hasn't been heard from or seen in 5 days. Early on in the investigation, detectives direct their focus to Tara's husband, Stephen. Although they haven't named him as a suspect, he's been acting strangely ever since he reported Tara missing on Valentine's Day. Mount Clemens, Michigan, Thursday, February 15th, 2007, 2:15 p.m. A cop pulls over Stephen Grant for a traffic violation. Before he's asked for identification, Stephen allegedly tells the officer he knows why he's been stopped, because of his wife. The officer notices 2 envelopes in the car, which contain more than $4,000 in cash. Stephen says the money is to pay for a lawyer. When the cop runs Stephen's license, it comes back suspended. Stephen Grant is arrested and taken to the local police station.
A lot of times we use a lesser charge to develop probable cause for us to hold you and kind of investigate a greater charge. And that's precisely what they're doing here.
Detectives detain Grant for 6 hours.
Once he leaves the location, we're going to have tails on him.
Wednesday, February 21st. Police hold a press conference, letting the public know they've asked Stephen Grant to take a lie detector test, which he refused. Earlier that same day, one of Grant's ex-girlfriends, Dina Hardy, contacts the Detroit News about emails she exchanged with him just weeks earlier. The paper publishes the emails.
So Stephen and Dina start to exchange emails, and he reveals to her and confides in her the fact that he feels that she's having an affair.
Stephen also suggests to Dina that he would feel justified in having an affair of his own. The emails are the first indication to police that the Grants' marriage is strained. Yet publicly, Stephen Grant seems to be every bit the concerned husband to Tara Lynn.
He leaves a number of voicemails on her mobile phone, voicemails of concern asking her to come home.
Stephen also goes to the local news media, asking for help in finding his missing wife.
He's acting, very interested in trying to ascertain the whereabouts of Tara.
He's calling journalists, he's trying to give them information, but also get information from them as to what's happening.
One of the things that he does, which is very unusual in nature, is he's calling up reporters and asking for critiques. How did I present myself? Was I articulate? Did I come across all right? And he actually called up one particular reporter and asked him if he thought it was all right if he went jogging during the time that they're searching for his wife.
Ironically, Stephen and Tara used to jog together about a mile from their home at Stony Creek Metro Park. Stony Creek Metro Park, Wednesday, February 28, 2007, 12:30 p.m. Police are called to a hiking trail after a woman makes an unusual discovery.
Sheila Werner finds a Ziploc bag with some bloody latex gloves and also some metal shavings, which she gives to the police, who run a number of tests.
One of the things that's going to be contained in there is not only the blood of Tara, but also their hair fibers within it, which are also going to come back as Tara's. The discovery of this evidence now allows them to go ahead and apply for a search warrant for the Grant house.
In February 2007, 2 weeks after Michigan mom Tara Lynn Grant is reported missing, a woman walking in a park discovers a Ziploc bag containing traces of her DNA. The Macomb County Sheriff's Department still doesn't know what happened to Tara, but they suspect her husband Stephen might know more than he's letting on. Looking for motive, detectives dig deeper into the Grants' relationship.
One of the things that's going to be contained in there is not only the blood of Tara, but also their hair fibers within it, which are also going to come back as Tara's. The discovery of this evidence now allows them to go ahead and apply for a search warrant for the Grant house.
Looking for motive, detectives dig deeper into the Grants' relationship.
Stephen Grant is normal, typical, somewhat all-American at the outset. Tara Lynn is your all-American Midwestern farm girl, cheerleader, very popular, vivacious, intelligent, very driven to get ahead. Both Tara and Stephen go to Michigan State University.
Stephen first meets Tara through a mutual friend.
They begin dating in 1994. As their relationship grows, their professional paths diverge.
They marry in 1996, and he seemingly gets everything he wants when she's pregnant and has their first child in 2000. And in 2002, they have a son. So, in effect, their family is complete.
On March 1st, 21 days after Tara Lynn vanished, police again expressed their frustration with Stephen Grant. While he continues to drag his feet with them, he speaks freely to the press.
On March 2nd, he's going to give a very extensive interview to the Detroit News. The amount of information is basically a treasure trove for detectives. He starts detailing everything about the relationship, how they had marital problems.
Stephen admits that he and Tara frequently engaged in power struggles.
He's trying to act concerned and be complimentary about her, but there is some leakage there in terms of him saying that yes, she was a good mum, but that she was absent a lot of the time. And some of his frustration and certainly his jealousy for her came out in that particular interview.
The reporters are left with a feeling that he resents her very much for her success and that he feels like he's been denigrated down to the stature of personal valet.
But is Stephen Grant's apparent resentment enough of a motive for him to be involved in his wife's disappearance? Washington Township, Michigan, Friday, March 2nd, 2007, 4 p.m. Cops execute a search warrant on the Grant residence. The entire process is videotaped.
He asks whether he can make a phone call to his attorney, which they grant.
Police also tell him, hey, you're free to leave at any point in time. He does, in fact, take the dog, puts him on a leash, he leaves the location, and he gets picked up by a friend.
Cops spend several hours turning the Grant house upside down. Inside the garage, officers make a horrific discovery.
To see a green container, sets kids' clothes. They open it up.
Need some light?
Not too much. And what do they find? They find her dismembered torso in there.
The discovery leads detectives to only one conclusion: that Stephen Grant murdered his wife and dismembered her body. But they can't arrest him because he's already on the run.
He goes to his friend's house, and then he goes to his sister's house. He tries to find a gun. He's unable to. He then wants to go get Vicodin from his sister. He wants to get razor blades. He wants to get a toy gun. And obviously what he's contemplating now is either self-imposed suicide or what we call suicide by cop, which is where he's got the toy gun, he's going to point it at policemen so that they're going to smoke him right there on the scene.
Stephen borrows a neighbor's truck and takes off for Wilderness State Park, a 10,000-acre wooded area 225 miles from his home. The temperature is in the mid-teens, and the park is blanketed with snow.
He has no shoes on, dresses down, just a simple shirt, pants.
It's certainly his intention to kill himself, but prior to that, he makes 2 phone calls, one to his sister and one to his attorney.
Law enforcement is able to trace the phone calls and track Grant to the park. They swarm the area within hours.
They actually go to that location, they find his truck there. Ultimately, they're going to find Stephen at the base of a tree in a state of semi-hypothermia, and they're going to actually have to sled him out.
Grant is transported to a nearby hospital, where he is treated for frostbite and hypothermia. Once his condition stabilizes, cops arrest him under suspicion of murder. Petoskey, Michigan, Sunday, March 4th, 2007. 37-year-old father of 2, Stephen Grant, is lying in a hospital bed under arrest for the murder of his wife, Tara Lynn. He tells police he's ready to make a full confession and walks detectives through the details of the events surrounding Tara's murder.
You were thinking you got away with this, correct?
Yeah, that's exactly correct.
According to Stephen, his anger began when his wife came home from a business trip on February 9th and never said hello to him. They got into an argument after he accused her of having an affair with one of her male colleagues.
He gets mad, he hits her, she goes down, strikes her head.
And I think at this point, Stephen Grant realizes that he probably is about to lose everything. And therefore, he decides that by strangling her, he is now taking control of the situation.
I just kept squeezing.
Okay.
Just kept squeezing. It wouldn't let go.
After strangling Tara to death, Stephen drags her body downstairs using a belt he'd tied around her neck.
So at no point in time did your kids hear anything or get up or say anything to you?
No, like I said, she went totally quiet.
Okay.
He decides to put her body in her car, knowing fully well that that car wouldn't be going anywhere and this would bide him some time.
The following day, February 10th, Stephen returns to his daily routine.
It comes to him that perhaps he should drive her to the tool and die store, which his father owns and where he worked, and he takes the body 2 days later to this workshop, and he starts to dismember her.
And you cut her with the saw blades, what were they called? Bandsaw blades?
Yeah, okay. Because they're sharp.
Stephen takes his wife's limbs and wraps them separately in plastic. He leaves her torso intact. Everything is put back in the family garage until the following day.
What he does now is he takes all those body parts, puts them into a plastic bin, puts it on a sled, attaches it, and then he tries to go out a hill.
The hill in question is located at Stony Creek Metro Park, the couple's favorite jogging location. But Stephen can't pull the heavy sled up the hill. At one point, he loses control of the sled and body parts spill out onto the snow.
He gets frustrated, he goes home. And he's home for a period of time and suddenly realizes, well, I better go back out and finish this.
I went out there and I cut all the bags open and took all the parts out and kind of started scattering them around. So I started to think about it. I'm like, no, you're scattering stuff around. This doesn't make any sense. You gotta hide it.
1 day later, February 14th, Stephen Grant reports Tara Lynn missing. 8 days after that, when law enforcement announces their intentions to search Stony Creek Metro Park, Stephen makes a desperate move to cover his tracks.
He becomes very nervous and anxious and actually goes to the Metro Park for the 3rd time and retrieves her torso.
First, Stephen takes the torso to the roof of his father's tool and die shop, where he throws it in some trash cans, but that doesn't calm his nerves.
He takes the torso back to the home address and places it in his own garage.
I was really surprised she would fit in that bucket. When I first started looking at her, once I got her out of the truck, I thought there's no way.
There's one additional piece to the puzzle. The Grants' 19-year-old au pair, Verena Deerkiss, had called police on March 1st and revealed that she and Stephen were having a sexual relationship that started the night before Tara Lynn was murdered.
But it was just one time. It was one time, and it was before that happened to Tara.
Verena believed that Tara was missing until Stephen called on his way to Wilderness Park and confessed to killing her. Mount Clemens, Michigan, Tuesday, December 11th, 2007. 9 months after being formally charged with first-degree murder, Stephen Grant's trial begins in Macomb County Circuit Court. He pleads guilty.
And it's a relatively easy case to prosecute in the sense that there's a full confession and lots of forensic evidence.
Verena Deerkiss testifies against her former boss and lover. So does Grant's ex-girlfriend, Dina Hardy.
The only defense that Stephen's defense team can possibly mount is the fact that it was not a premeditated murder, but rather that of a crime of passion. In other words, just occurred to spur of the moment.
Over 3 days, the jury deliberate and they return a verdict of guilty of second-degree murder.
Stephen Grant is subsequently sentenced to 50 to 80 years in prison. He receives an additional 6 to 10 years for dismemberment.
Macon, Georgia, Saturday, June 25th, 2011, 6:30 p.m. 27-year-old Mercer University Law School graduate Lauren Giddings pulls up to the drive-thru window of a Zaxby's restaurant.
She is the all-American girl, blonde, beautiful, sporty and athletic, outgoing and very popular.
Lauren returns home to the Barristers Hall Apartments, which is on-campus housing right across from the law school. Just after 10:15 p.m., she sends an email to her boyfriend. 4 a.m. Lauren is asleep in her second-floor unit, number 2. an intruder quietly slips into her apartment and creeps inside her bedroom.
And he stood there watching her.
Suddenly, the floor creaks.
She clearly senses that somebody is in her apartment and wakes up.
She screams. This person pounces on her. A violent fight ensues.
Lauren claws at the intruder's face, ripping off his mask. She's shocked by who it is and begs for her life.
She says, please don't, please don't.
He ends up strangling her.
And kill her.
The killer leaves, but returns later that evening with a hacksaw.
And he dismembers her in the bath.
He is going to cut off her legs, her arms, and her head. He wraps them very tightly in garbage bags. He takes her torso, wraps that into plastic trash bags.
The murderer leaves undetected and disposes of the body parts in 2 separate locations. Days will pass before anyone realizes that something has happened to Lauren.
A lot of people just surmise that she's studying very hard. She doesn't have time to get back to them.
Like many of her classmates, Giddings has been cramming for the bar exam.
Nobody thinks something has occurred of a criminal nature.
Barristers Hall Apartments, Thursday, June 29th, 2011, 11:15 p.m. Lauren Giddings' friends enter her apartment using a spare key she keeps hidden in a flower pot on the balcony.
She's got her purse there, her cell phone, the battery is completely dead, which is very unusual. Her keys are there.
The only thing that isn't there is Lauren Giddings. She's reported missing around midnight. Friday, June 30th, 9 a.m. Investigators with the Macon Police Department enter Giddings' apartment.
There's no sign of forced entry, just the absolute condition of the apartment and placement of items. They realize that there's a serious nature to this. It's critical that they find this woman as quickly as possible.
9:40 a.m. A detective investigates a foul odor coming from one of the apartment complex's garbage cans. He opens the lid and spots a black trash bag covered in flies.
They find a female torso, but absent the head, the arms, and the legs. The police actually caught a pretty lucky break on this one. It was just before the trash truck came to remove that dumpster.
DNA testing later confirms what police already suspect. The torso belongs to Lauren Giddings.
Sadly, her head, legs, and arms are never found.
Just 45 minutes after showing up to investigate a missing person, authorities now know they're dealing with a homicide. Officers canvass the area talking to neighbors and friends. They encounter 25-year-old Stephen McDaniel, who's lived next door to Lauren Giddings for nearly 3 years. McDaniel agrees to accompany cops back to the Detective Bureau. Macon Police Headquarters, Friday, June 30th, 2011, 11:50 a.m. Stephen McDaniel waits in the interrogation room for 90 minutes before officers conduct an informal interview with him.
Well, you understand that we're trying to locate Lauren. She's missing. And you stated that you're willing to do anything to help me.
If I can help, I will, but...
At one point during the interview, a detective notices strange marks on McDaniel's face.
Did you hurt your nose or something?
Where?
The red mark on your nose right there. How'd you get that red mark on your nose?
Is it a mirror?
Right before cops take McDaniel back to his apartment, the detective asks him to lift up his shirt.
You mind lifting it up again? What's that right there? Huh?
I scratched myself in my sleep, I think.
You scratched yourself in your sleep? That's a big old scratch or something, ain't it? You don't remember when that happened? All right, come on.
On June 30th, 2011, police in Macon, Georgia, find a severed torso in a trash can outside the Barristers Hall Apartments on the campus of Mercer University. The torso belongs to 27-year-old law school graduate Lauren Giddings, who'd been missing for 5 days. Law enforcement quickly learns from one of Lauren's friends that something spooked her just 2 days before she disappeared.
She felt that somebody had been in her apartment, and she'd actually told her boyfriend about that, and she felt very unnerved by it.
Could the person who entered Lauren's apartment just days earlier be her killer? 3 hours into the murder investigation, detectives have already talked to several of Lauren's friends and neighbors. They question next-door neighbor Stephen McDaniel, eager to find out the dynamics of his relationship with Giddings.
They were both attending the same law school. She becomes president of the Federalist Society. He becomes the vice president. They weren't intimate by any stretch of imagination, but they were friendly toward each other.
Stephen made advances to her, so he was seeking very much a relationship with her, and she wasn't interested, and she told him as much.
Who exactly is Stephen McDaniel?
Stephen was very much the loner, didn't have many friends. He was a bookish misfit. He was very quiet, very reclusive, and he spent a lot of time in his own apartment with the windows closed and the curtains drawn on his computer.
He has a very high IQ, but he has a tendency to flaunt his intelligence around others, which is going to disenfranchise him from a lot of people, especially females. But Stephen has an obsession with zombies, and he starts asking people what they do if they were under attack by zombies, how would they commit perfect murder.
Still, most of McDaniel's peers think he's just a prototypical, harmless geek.
And in his fantasies, he was somebody who felt powerful. But in reality, he was almost invisible.
Barristers Hall Apartments, Friday, June 30th, 2011, 1:40 p.m. Stephen McDaniel reluctantly allows officers to take a quick look around his apartment. They're stunned by what they see inside.
He's got samurai swords, he's got guns. He has provisions which are stashed and stockpiled as if he's expecting some kind of apocalyptic event. He also has dates noted on all the food to when it expires. They notice that he saves empty bottles, toilet rolls. They notice, too, that he's all these PlayStation and all these different video games of a violent nature.
Shortly after the walkthrough, a local news reporter interviews McDaniel outside the complex. Despite everything that's going on, he looks relaxed.
No one has seen her since Saturday. I haven't seen anything.
Stephen McDaniel seems willing and eager to answer the media's questions about his missing neighbor.
Do you know anybody any enemies she might have had, somebody that might want to hurt her?
No, we don't know where she is. The only thing we can think is that maybe she went out running and someone snatched her.
He seemingly is helping the police and helping search for Lauren. He's the person who's incredibly helpful, a friend of hers, a neighbor that's concerned.
But McDaniel's demeanor appears to change from helpful to panicked after the reporter tells him cops found a human torso in the trash.
What about in the parking lot area? I think that's where they have recovered the body or whatever they recovered from there.
Body?
Had you seen anything there?
He becomes visibly shocked and he stops talking.
Are you okay, sir?
I think I need to sit down.
Okay.
One of the things that the police do notice and the detectives notice is that Stephen, who's kind of off to the side.
Officers ask a distraught McDaniel to join them in the mobile command unit.
He starts drinking incessantly, basically like 10 bottles of water, which is very unusual. He becomes very zombie-like, kind of stares, really kind of disassociating himself with what's occurring and transpiring in the moment.
Is Stephen McDaniel an acquaintance in shock or a murderer? He refuses to take a polygraph and will remain under police supervision at the scene for the next 9 hours. Friday, June 30th, 2011, 2 p.m. Police bring in cadaver dogs to search the apartment complex for further evidence of human remains. Within minutes, the dogs track a scent to the laundry room.
One of the first clues that they find is a bloody sheet in the washing machine. They're going to take that blood, analyze it, and it comes back DNA profiled to Lauren.
The cadaver dogs also pick up scent trails inside 3 separate apartments. In Unit 1, which is directly below Lauren Giddings' apartment, the dogs alert on the bathroom and living room wall. A detective inspects the wall and notices small stains and smears which appear to be dried blood. In Unit 2, Lauren Giddings' apartment, cadaver dogs immediately zero in on the bathroom. Crime scene investigators return later and spray a chemical called luminol, which can reveal bodily fluids under blue light not observable to the naked eye. In Stephen McDaniel's residence, Unit 4, the dogs pick up on the smell of human remains in his bedroom and bathroom. Next, investigators go to the parking lot and look through the windows of McDaniel's car. They notice what appears to be large bloodstains on the front and rear seats. Less than 12 hours into their investigation, Macon, Georgia PD have already identified Stephen McDaniel as a person of interest in the homicide and dismemberment of Lauren Giddings.
Why would anyone do this?
She didn't hear anything?
No.
She didn't see anybody?
I heard something. Maybe I could have helped.
Okay, don't worry.
Two people on different ends of the spectrum. She, incredibly beautiful, popular, and he, on the other end, a bookish misfit that was socially awkward, creepy and odd.
Barristers Hall Apartments, Friday, June 30th, 2011, 10:42 p.m. Cops execute a search warrant on Stephen McDaniel's unit, seizing several items of clothing, as well as multiple knives and a sword. By 11:15 p.m. that same night, detectives have McDaniel in the hot seat for the second time in less than 24 hours.
I need to know about this girl right here. You know her?
Yes.
Who is that?
Lauren Giddings.
Was you friends with Lauren?
Yes.
Look at me when you talk to me, son, okay? Was you friends with her?
Yes.
Close friends?
We were good.
I mean...
All the time the police are interviewing him, they're using a number of levers to trying to get him to confess.
You didn't have no problem talking to the news when they asked you questions. I'm asking you questions. Where's Lauren?
I don't know.
Yes, you do know. You do know. And everybody in Macon knows you knows because you got your sorry ass on the news and told everybody.
McDaniel remains stoic.
Did you hurt Lauren?
No.
Stephen, did you hurt Lauren?
No.
I know this is hard for you to tell it, but it's weighing on you right now, ain't it, Stephen?
I didn't do it.
Later, though, McDaniel slips up by admitting to cops he burglarized 2 apartments in his complex. In each incident, he claims he only stole 1 condom.
A burglary for a condom. This is the first time I've ever heard of anything like this. But it's enough to keep him in custody. They arrest him on the condom theft. That allows them to monitor Stephen as to how he's going to react as they start building a case against him.
Police photograph McDaniel, paying close attention to scratches on his body. They also collect fingernail clippings and samples of his DNA and hair. Barristers Hall Apartments, Sunday, July 1st, 2011, 3 a.m. Police return to Stephen McDaniel's apartment to perform a second search. They seize computers and a camera, which are sent off to the FBI crime lab for analysis. Under a stack of papers on McDaniel's dresser drawer, officers find a literal key piece of evidence.
There's a master key, which allows Stephen access to every other apartment within the complex, including Miss Giddings, along with a duplicate key to her apartment.
The next day, on July 2nd, 2011, investigators find a hacksaw stashed in a utility closet where Stephen McDaniel lived, which was only accessible by someone with a master key.
They find bits of flesh and hair and fiber, and all this is DNA profiled right back to Lauren.
A male's DNA is also found on the saw, but forensics can't confirm or exclude McDaniel. Stephen maintains that he did not kill Lauren Giddings, but the Macon Police Department remains relentless in their pursuit to prove his guilt. Barristers Hall Apartments, Wednesday, July 20th, 2011. Cops recover packaging materials from the hacksaw used to dismember Lauren Giddings in a vanity underneath Stephen's sink. They find yet another piece of critical evidence in his bedroom.
They find one of her panties. They're contained in a sock drawer. If that isn't damning, I don't know what is.
Before long, the analysis comes back on McDaniel's laptop and hard drives, giving detectives enough sickening evidence to nail him once and for all. On August 2nd, 2011, after an intense month-long investigation, Macon, Georgia police charged Stephen McDaniel with the first-degree murder of his law school classmate and next-door neighbor, Lauren Giddings. McDaniel is also charged with 7 counts of possession of child pornography.
You have all the hard drives. You have research into the brutal way in which he's killed. You have her underwear, which is contained within his apartment. I think any reasonable person could assume that this individual was in fact targeting Lauren.
Over the next 2 years, as prosecutors build their case against Stephen McDaniel, they offer him multiple plea deals, but he remains defiant. In April 2014, at the 11th hour, law enforcement uncovers one piece of evidence that Stephen McDaniel can't deny. Georgia State Police have finally managed to recover videos deleted from a camera found in McDaniel's apartment.
What they find is that the night of the murder is filmed for a number of hours inside her location. He's looking to see exactly how the door is set up. He's looking to see where she is in the location. The most damning thing is the fact that it is time-stamped with the night of the murder. He now agrees to a plea deal. Now he's going to roll on himself.
Bibb County Superior Court, Monday, April 21st, 2014. Stephen McDaniel pleads guilty to first-degree murder. He reads a 700-word confession in front of Lauren Giddings' family and friends.
So between the hours of 9 and 12 o'clock, he is watching her.
Approximately 04:30 in the morning, what he claims that he wore a mask, he wore gloves, he used a master key to gain entrance into her location. That he did in fact stand over her, watching her sleep.
According to Stephen, when Lauren woke up, they started fighting.
She screamed out, she ripped the mask off, said, "Stephen, stop, please stop this." And he started to choke her, meaning just to subdue her, and realized that he had to go farther, so he subsequently killed her.
McDaniel was less decisive about how to cover up the murder.
He takes her body, puts it in the bathtub, and then leaves, locks the door. He goes back to his apartment. He's going to spend the better part of the day and evening in his apartment on the computer. Now he's trying to figure out, okay, I've got to get rid of the evidence. So what he does is he dismembers the corpse.
After dismembering Lauren Giddings' body, McDaniel cuts the gloves and mask and flushes the pieces down the toilet. At that point, all Stephen McDaniel needed to do was keep his cool and hope the trash man removed the body parts before police could locate them. Neither happened. The judge sentences McDaniel to life in prison.